Chapter 1091, Ancient Continent. Chapter 1091, Ancient Continent _ Space Power Upanishad. The matured woman screamed in fear. She could only watch Shi disappear and reappear by the outer layer of desolate in a blink of an eye. She couldn't do anything. She was so annoyed. At her realm, she could know Shi's true realm with only a glance, but she couldn't know which powers Upanishad he was cultivating. Thus, she couldn't predict that Shi had space power Upanishad. Seeing Shi escape using his space power Upanishad, she understood immediately. She knew why Shi had been calm when he met them. Mother, the slender but graceful girl changed her visage. The young man also had a regretful face. He sighed begrudgingly and shook his head. Father must know the power Upanishad he cultivates. That's why he could leave him here unguarded. As the three of them were ready to attack Shi, they had even mobilized their energy. On the one hand, they wanted to take the guiding fruit back. On the other hand, they wanted to make Shangchun show himself. When Shi had successfully escaped, they knew Shangchun had left a long time ago. That cowardly bastard! The matured woman gritted her teeth. She looked so angry that her eyes were raging with flames. The young man calmed down quickly. He's entering desolate. We can't take the guiding fruit back. Yeah, we can't always get what we want. We need to alter the plan, though. Little Chio, do you have any good solution? The woman sighed begrudgingly. The young man shook his head. I don't have any good solution. Anyway, we can enter desolate with the guiding fruit. No one could break this rule for many years. Of course we can't, either. He suddenly smiled and said gently, honestly, I'm not interested in entering desolate. Go, yelled the girl. Waving his hand, the young man stopped her screaming. He naturally took out a guiding fruit from his sleeve and shoved it into her hand. Little you go there. I'm here waiting for your good news. No. The girl shook her head, her neck reddening. She screamed, Father took my guiding fruit. It means he favors you more than me. You know he has keen eyes. This trip is crucial to you. You must take the chance. Nah, he just took it randomly. It was easier to take your fruit. You are overthinking it. The young man smiled brightly and relaxedly. I can reach incipient God realm without entering desolate. You need to fuse the powers Upanishad. You must get in there shortly. After the young man said that, he didn't let the girl talk more. He swayed his body and moved away like a beam of light. After several flashes, he disappeared. Just keep it as little Chio gave it to you. The woman lovingly adjusted the hem of the girl's dress. She said tenderly, Go and bring us a surprise 10 years later. Find your brother the materials he needs. I believe you can do it. The beautiful eyes of the girl were complicated as she nodded and answered gently, I understand. She bent her waist slightly and said seriously, Take care, mother and Gidge. Good girl. We will be all right. Your evil father can calculate things well. He will appear if something happens to us. The woman consoled the girl. Yes, mother. The young girl nodded and bid farewell to her mother. She flew like a gust of wind towards desolate. The rings on her white wrist flashed. The exquisite patterns on them emerged beautifully. It happened as what Shangchun had told Shi. He didn't need to do anything to enter desolate. The guiding fruit in his hand was the key. When he approached the edge of desolate and sensed the earth-shattering energy inside, Shi felt an explosion in his soul. He was shaken hard. It was the masterpiece of God and the power of nature. The torrential energy hiding in desolate was thicker and more powerful than that of an expert he knew. Shi immediately felt overwhelmed. His soul flickered anxiously as he couldn't approach further. However, the guiding fruit exploded and made blue halos cover his entire body and protect his soul altar. Shi fell calm. He didn't even move. An unknown force started to pull him into the atmosphere while the electric arc that could kill the soul covering the planet ignored him and let him pass through. While he had almost entered desolate, he saw an incipient God realm expert trying to break into the planet at a corner pretty far from him. The electric arc stopped him and attacked his soul. The incipient God realm expert immediately got hurt. He had to use some soul-class secret treasure to get rid of the attack. Shi Yin also saw many blurry blue shadows like him from other areas of Desolate. They were slowly guided by Desolate, and they moved through the atmosphere. After he had passed the atmosphere of Desolate, he had a wonderful feeling as if he had just jumped into the water. He felt floaty as he slowly sank. All of a sudden, he became a shooting star that plunged through layers of cotton clouds and a sparking electric passage. He grumblingly landed. However, before he hit the ground hard, he hurried to urge his energy. The immortal demon blood burst out, which held him backward. Shi Yin landed inside a vast bog. This wet, muddy area had countless plants and foliage. The energy here was so thick that it was like a murmuring stream moving above his head. With a deep breath, Shi Yin felt so wonderful as if the pores in his body were all relaxed. It was a marvelous experience indeed. Shi Yin was shaken, standing idly and perplexedly. He felt like he had an explosion in his head. Earth and heaven energy were so thick that it was almost like water spreading everywhere. Even though Shi Yin didn't do anything, energy still flowed into his chest and seeped through his skin, following his veins to fill his essence chi ancient tree. It felt like soaking in a warm spring to wash his dirty body. Even his soul was clear. Ancient continent. Worth the name of the ancient continent. Shi Yin was surprised. He furrowed his brows and touched his forehead instinctively. Shortly after, his eyes brightened up. His co-soul has some changes. Shi Yin's co-soul was Grace Mainland's origin, which was the 10 heaven flames combined with a wisp of his soul. Now, his co-soul was like a sweet stream gushing out the remaining energy that it had gathered from outer space, which poured into this ethereal extent. In this area, his co-soul seemed to be able to guide the energy of outer space into his body. At the same time, it felt so relaxed and safe. Shi Yin's co-soul was Grace Mainland's origin, and Grace Mainland was also an ancient continent. In this area, his co-soul seemed to harvest big benefits as it could guide a lot of free energy into this body. Shi Yin used his soul consciousness to check and found his co-soul wrapped in wisps of creamy white mist, which were drawn from the energy around him. It congregated in his head and covered his co-soul. The co-soul was washed once again, and it gave him a magical feeling of something crystal clear and clean. He suddenly recognized the incredible benefit that this place had offered his co-soul and ethereal extent. Shi Yin stood still in the swamp where he was surrounded by thick energy and many strange pieces of herbs and foliage. Shi Yin didn't want to move yet. Closing his eyes, Shi Yin was trying to sense the commotion around him. Suddenly, his sea of consciousness became chaotic as if some invisible force had just affected his mind. It was almost impossible to sense the surroundings using soul consciousness. When he tried to fly away, a strong gravity was suddenly applied at his spot, which pulled him back and prevented him from flying up to the sky. Desolate has cognition. It sealed itself and will open every 10,000 years. You can escape after 10 years. What Shang Chun had told him about the magical features of this area suddenly emerged in his head. Shi Yin was astounded. He lifted his hand to walk and put aside the thought of flying away. Surprisingly, the intense gravity that had just pulled him down didn't exist. Shi Yin was dumbstruck. Now he could confirm what Shang Chun had told him. This area was truly marvelous. And he realized that the earth under his feet indeed had its consciousness. This planet was truly a fantastic existence in this universe that stood for something mysterious that no one knew about. Shi Yin stood at his spot and took out the book that Shang Chun had given him to study the drawings and descriptions that Shang Chun had prepared. Shang Chun wrote this thin book himself. Shi Yin admired his style of calligraphy and the realistic drawings. Those pictures seemed to be able to emerge from the pages. The content of this book contained descriptions of original incipient grade materials and how to find and distinguish them. It was useful with the drawings and description as the readers could have a deep understanding of those wonderful materials. Shi Yin quieted down. He temporarily put aside the mysteries of this ancient continent to focus on the book. Shang Chun wasn't just operating in Agate Star area. He was the fate traveler, and he seemed to travel through many strange star areas. His knowledge was broad and profound. The descriptions he wrote in the book were clear and easy to understand, which gave Shi Yin big benefits. Without this book, even if he saw the most precious thing on this ancient continent, he could never know it and waste his rare chance. With this book, he had a tool that could give him explanations at any time. This book was precious to him to distinguish something priceless. Bam! While he was reading the book earnestly, a low explosion came from afar with an angry scream. Frowning, he stashed the book. Thinking for a while, he silently dashed towards the source of the noise. The sound he had just heard came from Shang-Chen's daughter. She was the elegant woman who wasn't good to him while they were out there. The two guiding fruits they had should have something in common, which guided her near him. Shi Yin was worried that something unexpected happened to that girl, so he came to see if he could help. Anyway, the guiding fruit that got him here came from them. Although Shang-Chen had given him the fruit himself, Shi Yin still felt shameful. Moreover, she was Shang-Chen's daughter. For Shang-Chen, he couldn't stand still when his daughter got into trouble. However, things didn't go as he thought. When he arrived quietly, he saw that the young woman had fallen into a small, clear pond. She was soaking wet and her damp clothes were sticking on her generous contours. At this moment, she was rubbing her beautiful rear end gracelessly. She murmured in pain. Evidently, she got a rough landing. The robe that covered her beautiful curvy butts was wet, which made her more mesmerizing than ever. The contour of that wonderful butt cheek was breathtaking. Seeing her soft hand rubbing it, it looked pretty flexible. The bouncing cheek almost made Shi Yan's nose bleed. Standing and looking at her from a far distance, Shi Yan thought that he should leave quietly before he recognized her sharp blade look that would drill into his eyes and lock him down. Little bastard! The young woman cursed indignantly. She didn't notice her gentle curves were revealed. She violently dashed forward and raised fierce thunderbolts in the sky. Chapter 1092, Refined Blood. Chapter 1092, Refined Blood. The sky above the pond was covered with lightning. Electric arcs weaved like a light net that snatched over Shi Yan. In the grumbling thunder like an avalanche, the young woman gritted her white teeth, her elegant face cold. Savage electric dragons swirled around her body with an intimidating aura, her narrow eyes shooting electric beams. Shi Yan was frightened. That woman was at third sky of incipient god realm. She seemed to cultivate both lightning and ice powers Upanishads. She had exquisite attainment of both powers Upanishad. The moment the lightning strikes swarmed over Shi Yan, a sleet shower also started to fall from the sky. The rocks that were the size of a human head fell massively and rolled with power and icy energy. At that moment, the temperature of the surroundings was reduced dozens of times. After the lightning strikes hit the pond, it was damaged severely. Dirty water splashed on exploded foliage. Apparently, the woman thought he was peeping at her. She was so angry that her face turned purple. Her attacks could rise strong waves and gusts of wind from the surroundings. Her fiercely scorching lightning had stirred the entire area and left nothing in peace. While lightning strikes and sleet were attacking everywhere, Shi Yan retreated like a ghost, flashing on and off. Brilliant starlight dots sparkled around Shi Yan. They made his way, his trajectory in the sea of stars, moving him at fast speed. He ran so fast that even the soul consciousness couldn't catch him. After the battle in Cloud Sea Star, Shi Yan had put aside all the chaotic issues to watch the rising and lowering tides with Xia, Xian Yan and Ziyao. His soul was peaceful and relaxed. When he had the mood to comprehend his powers Upanishads, he could occasionally grasp the key element of his power. Within that short time, he had improved his star power Upanishad to the level that could make people feel envy and awe. Shi Yan urged his star power Upanishad and used the star power to create the magical sea of stars. His body seemed to fall into the starry sky, moving as if he was a star that could change according to the galaxy. His soul and body had fused with earth and heaven. Starlight dots emerged. While he was moving backward, those starlight dots sometimes gathered, sometimes scattered. This kind of movement was strange but marvelous. The woman had her eyelashes battered. Her soul consciousness was released like a vast net, but she couldn't figure out his direction. In her sensibility, Shi Yan had disappeared from her sight as if he had become a part of this ancient continent. a tree, or even a leaf. He had blended well into the surroundings that the young woman couldn't detect his life energy fluctuation. The ability to recognize and locate the soul and aura was the premise to guide the attacks. Just like when a normal warrior fought, he needed to see where the opponent was to properly aim his attack. The thundering attack of the woman also needed to locate Shi Yin first before she could do anything. However, right when Shi Yin used his star power Upanishad, he had become part of the earth and heaven here. Sometimes, the others could see him with their eyes, but they couldn't grasp his location with their soul consciousness. This irritated the young woman a lot. Her savage attacks couldn't be accurate. She could only stir up the area around the pond. She had created many holes on the ground. At the same time, the dirty water of the swarm shot up and turned into a muddy shower falling from the sky. A large amount of dirty water had showered her and made her helter-skelter. As this ancient continent had restricted the warrior's soul consciousness, they could sense a small area around them. It was different from the other places where they could cover half a star with their soul consciousness. Thus, when Shi Yan's image disappeared from her sight, she couldn't figure out where Shi Yin once again. The graceful young woman had a lot of mud and other dirty, sticky objects from the swamp all over her body. She walked around the area to check for a while, but she couldn't see any commotion from Shi Yin. She felt so gross and she wanted to find a clear lake to wash her body and change her clothes. This area had many lakes and bogs. Some were filled with dirty water, but there were still many clean lakes. However, it was strange that the entire place didn't have any life energy fluctuation of living creatures. Without insects, the whole place was filled with unknown foliage. After Shi Yin had escaped the woman's attack, he still looked calm and gentle. He wandered around the swamp and held the book Shang Chun had given him in his hand. He wasn't too bored to compete against that girl. However, Shi Yin thought that she was tough at her third sky of ethereal god realm with her lightning and ice powers Upanishad. At the same time, her blood chi was abundant with a strong life magnetic field. Perhaps she wasn't less powerful than a first sky of incipient god realm expert like Feng Yin. Shi Yin thought it was really difficult to fight to the death against her. Anyway, he didn't need to fight that woman. She was Shang Qin's daughter, and the guiding fruit that Shi Yin got was from her family. At the same time, Shang Chun had treated him pretty well, and his relationship with Frederick of the bloodthirsty bloodline was quite good. From any aspect, he shouldn't provoke or fight with her. He'd better stay away from her. With the book in his hand, Shi Yin read carefully while observing the spiritual herbs and flowers around him. There were many flowers with peculiar auras and energy. However, they weren't original incipient grade materials. His book didn't have any articles about them. However, Shi Yin could find many divine grade materials, which were attractive to original God Realm warriors if they appeared in the market. However, he wasn't here for them. Although he found them interesting, he had to put his efforts into finding the strange and rare things in this book. This swamp seemed endless. He walked around the area for a long time, but he didn't see the end. Lifting his head to look at the sky, Shi Yin had an admiring look. Although it had been a while, every time he watched the arch of the sky above his head, he always felt surprised. There were many colorful clouds in the sky, which looked like rainbows hanging that never disappeared. Their glamour made his soul mesmerized. Every time he looked at the sky, he felt like he was in a fantasy world where he never wanted to leave. Thick energy like water and spiritual herbs and grass were everywhere on the ground. There were magical sights that he had never seen before. It's an ancient continent. However, he hadn't seen the special places that Shang Chun had told him or found original incipient grade materials yet. Anyway, the energy he had consumed for teleportation to this area was refilled. The essence chi ancient tree in his body was filled. Today, he stopped by a lush lawn. His eyes brightened in thrill. Those green tufts were immortal grass. To him, a warrior with immortal demon blood, the immortal grass was a great tonic. Shi Yin didn't want to keep his manner, so he lingered on this lawn to pick up the immortal grass and grind them to take the green fluid. His fingers absorbed the fluid, and he used the magical energy from the liquid to generate immortal demon blood. Just like he had taken in the panacea, he felt so refreshed. The ruby drops of immortal demon blood were generated and were stashed inside his veins, bones, and even his lungs. Tufts of immortal grass disappeared under his fingers. Gradually, the immortal grass around him was cleared and it left a bare ground. He sat neatly on the damp, muddy area. His aura was quiet when he was mobilizing the immortal demon blood in his body. It circulated around his internal organs and made them fill each of his veins. His blood chi surged like a rising tide, shooting out from his god body. Bones of his skeleton sounded of crack. Each of his muscles was shivering as if the muscles were taking in energy and sounding happy. The shrunken 720 acupuncture points in his body started to vibrate. When drops of immortal demon blood circulated in his body, he seemed to receive great god power. He felt that an unrivaled energy had just filled his body. Beams of blood mist flew out of his pores. His god body was quenched another time, as if he had a complete transformation. Those immortal grass had helped him generate more than 300 drops of immortal demon blood. Those drops of immortal demon blood flew through his veins and burned down dregs and contaminations, which made his god body tougher and more tenacious. Shortly, he transformed into an immortal demon shape. Ferocious, sharp spikes appeared on his elbows, knees, and shoulders. His body was as red as melting iron. At this moment, his body had an exploding beauty with the natural armor that covered his entire body. He looked like the perfect knight with a naturally fierce and brutal aura. This procedure took time. The bones in his body sounded of crack for a long time. Eventually, he resumed his normal shape. After a while, he awoke and slowly stood up to check his condition. He grinned happily. Although his realm hadn't broken through yet, each muscle of his was filled with power and his bones like iron. Now Yin had confidence that nothing could break him. His thought flickered and his eyes shot out dazzling light that was aimed at the pinky finger of his left hand. The fingertip exploded when he released the star energy in his body through his finger. He immediately urged the immortal demon blood. A ruby immortal demon blood was sent to that damaged area. The supernatural recovery ability of the immortal demon blood was activated immediately. He could feel clearly that the broken bones were covered and connected shortly. After 15 minutes, he found his little bone was recovered. Checking for a while, he saw nothing abnormal. He suddenly recognized the tenaciousness and recovery level of his body. All had become terrifying because of his immortal demon blood. Laughing, he urged the energy in his body, striding forward. He felt he had reached the peak of his state, and he would break through to the second sky of ethereal god realm soon. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The ear-splitting wind hissed by his ears as if something was whipping in the air, which almost exploded in the air. Standing bewildered for a while, Yin accelerated and dashed towards the source of the sound. Dozens of meters-long vines were winding around a blurry shadow in front of him. Those vines had a lot of sharp thorns that danced like crazy pythons and wreaked havoc in that area. Their auras were so frightening. He concentrated and observed. That massive blurry shadow over there was a kind of bizarre demonic rattan. It looked like a small mountain with so many vines, which were moving and whipping unceasingly. Those vines were trying to capture a person. That figure was dashing madly like an electric beam and swaying between vines that had covered the sky. Surprisingly, that was Shang-Chen's daughter, a warrior cultivating lightning and ice powers Upanishad at third sky of ethereal god realm. However, her condition was evidently not good in this moment. Chapter 1093, 100 Kalpa Ghost Hand Rattan. Chapter 1093, 100 Kalpa Ghost Hand Rattan _ The iron-like thorny rattans were dancing in the sky like lightning strikes. They had crushed a lot of surrounding things. The demonic rattan was like a small mountain with many strong, terrifying vines. They looked rigid enough to resist different energy attacks. The lightning strikes that the woman had used couldn't scratch it much. While those vines were moving at the air, they narrowed her available space. Gradually, she lost space to hide. The vines had a lot of sharp thorns. When they passed by her, they brought gusts of wind that blew her body and made her shiver. When those Rattans touched her blue dresses that were made of some special materials, they were cut open. Her blue dress was torn, revealing her soft, creamy white skin. She became more anxious, her breathing disordered. Her soul altar became turbulent. The dispute between her lightning and ice powers Upanishad emerged, which reduced the power of her attacks. Normally, warriors who cultivated different powers Upanishads could use their powers to support each other or fuse their powers into one with a special method, further promoting their powers to another higher level. However, there were still different situations. Before they could fuse the powers and let their mind be turbulent, the dispute between powers Upanishads happened, which reduced the powers of their powers Upanishads. The vines pushed the girl into a corner. As her attacks couldn't do what she had expected, she became more anxious, which triggered the conflict between her two powers. It was also the reason why most of the warriors wouldn't cultivate two or more powers Upanishad at the same time. When a warrior cultivates different powers Upanishad at the same time, their breakthrough slows down when they reach ethereal God realm. Their progress would be slower than the warriors who cultivate only one power Upanishad. It was really hard to fuse different powers Upanishads and at the same time. It could cause a conflict between the powers during fighting that would decrease the warrior's fighting competence. Shang Chen's daughter had strange halos ripple through her eyes. Terrifying lightning strikes burst out from her rings on her porcelain wrists. Suddenly, a dazzling lightning strike emerged. In just a blink of an eye, she had a shining blue lightning rod in her hand. This rod was made of pure lightning energy with burning power stored inside. With the blue lightning rod in her hands, the lightning beams crawling on her body had the gates to gush out. They all flowed fiercely towards the lightning rod. Within that moment, billion lightning beams twisted together. The lightning strike that was just generated became longer and larger. The furious energy it carried increased unceasingly. At first glance, Shi Yin slightly paled, his face fearful. That blue lightning rod was apparently an original incipient-grade weapon. It could absorb and amplify the lightning energy in her body. After she took out the lightning rod, her aura changed massively. At this moment, she didn't use any bit of her cold energy. She used pure lightning to control the lightning rod. The area around her now had countless lightning strikes that created terrifying electric dragons. The rod that the woman was holding was also a divine weapon of lightning class. However, it was much better than Du Lin's Thunder God Spear. Shi Yin could tell that because the lightning energy accumulated inside that rod was much more abundant and turbulent. The tenacious vines got hit by lightning strikes every time they made their way to approach the girl, sending gray smoke to the air. This demonic Rattan wasn't rooted inside the swamp. It could move fast and agilely. Seeing the girl take out that lightning rod, the massive body of the demonic Rattan wiggled, retracted the vines, and sank back into the swamp. Countless vines moved toward the Rattan. Shortly after, the demonic tree disappeared into the murky wetland. The woman looked upset. She cursed and struck her lightning energy into the swamp, which sent the muddy water into the sky. It seemed like she had waited and plotted that demonic Rattan for a long time. She even tried to hide her real power and the divine weapon to entice that tree. However, seeing Shi Yin emerge, she was afraid that he could ambush her. Thus, she had to use the divine weapon before the right time she had planned. This commotion had scared the demonic Rattan and made it run away. Cursing the tree for a while, she turned around with her cold face and glared at Shi Yin. She said indignantly, "It's you again." Frowning, Shi Yin didn't get a clue. "It has nothing to do with me, doesn't it? If you hadn't appeared, I could have lured the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan out of its bog and killed it," said the young woman with a pair of cold and harsh eyes. "I just passed by coincidentally. It's you who thought that I would attack you. It's your mistake." Shi Yin shook his head and didn't mind her anymore. He frowned and prepared to leave. "You shouldn't dream of leaving," she snorted. "Let sum up the dead of you peeping at me." She didn't use the lightning divine weapon to attack Shi Yin. Her rod turned into an azure lightning strike and then a jade ring on her moonlight wrist. Her 10 slender and delicate fingers moved, shooting out lightning strikes that weaved with each other into a thick mesh lightning net. Thunder sounded grumblingly in that net, which flashed with the blinding lightning. The net suddenly snatched over Shi Yin. At the same time, an icy aura spread over from the swamp under his feet. Shi Yin couldn't react when the cold air intruded his feet. As soon as the cold air got through his feet, his legs froze and locked his veins and bones. He couldn't move or run away. Apparently, this woman was prepared. She knew that she couldn't find Shi Yin if she let him run once. Thus, she had mobilized the ice energy earlier and sent it underground. When she created the lightning net, she had also urged the freezing energy to block Shi Yin, which prevented him from using the star energy to escape. Her eyes were elegant, but as cold as the frost flower. They had a gleam of arrogance and coldness. "Let's see how you run from me this time." Shi Yin burst out laughing and said begrudgingly, "Do you think you can kill me with this?" Boom! A fiercely brutal aura shot up into the sky with a deadly murderous aura. Crack! Crack! Shi Yan's feet were set free instantly. When the bloodthirsty aura was released, his veins and bones moved with boiling, immortal demon blood. His energy was brimming within seconds. He had a violently surging energy. Crack! Shi Yin balled his hand into a fist, which then ballooned like a windmill. He furiously punched the lightning net with plenty of murderous ori. Sizzle! 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 Thunderclaps resounded and lightning beams shot out everywhere when the lightning net the young woman had cast was smashed. It became many sparks twinkling around her. "If I want to fight to the death against you, I'm sure you can't win. However, I'm giving your father Shangchun face. Can you not disturb me, please?" While electric beams were shooting out everywhere, Shi Yin told her with a severe complexion. The beautiful eyes of the woman froze as she looked at her lightning net shatter with disbelief. As she knew that she couldn't gather her energy again, she grimaced, "Are you really at first sky of ethereal god realm?" She was called Shanging Yu, and she was Shangchen's daughter. She cultivated lightning and ice powers Upanishads. She had a divine weapon. Shangchun used to use different blood qi to quench her body. Whether it was because of her divine weapon or her exquisite powers Upanishads, she belonged to the group of top warriors in this vast universe. At third sky of ethereal god realm, she could defeat most first sky of incipient god realm experts. She had the competence to challenge the warriors whose realms were one level higher than hers. However, it was unacceptable to her when Shi Yin had smashed her lightning net. Shi Yin had only first sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base. Although she didn't use her max power in that attack, it wasn't something that ordinary warriors could resist. She deemed herself brilliant, but at this moment, she couldn't defeat a warrior at first sky of ethereal god realm, which was extremely unbelievable to her. However, what made her flame of rage burst was that Shi Yin told her that she was disturbing him. "I am disturbing you?" Shanging Yu felt so angry. "You took my guiding fruit and my brother couldn't enter this place. You've sneaked on me twice. And you tell me that I'm disturbing you? I have never seen any man at your despicable level." Swoosh! She blinked. A lightning strike was aimed at Shi Yin. Thunder resounded noisily. At the same time, a strange blue icicle drilled towards Shi Yin's chest instantaneously. This was a combined attack of lightning and ice power Upanishad. The lightning icicle carried two magical powers with a strange, evil energy fluctuation that was beyond Shi Yin's understanding. He was surprised that his soul consciousness couldn't lock it. Frowning, Shi Yin urged his power Upanishad. He rose his hand and made a cut in the void. A fine space crack with outer space streamers appeared in front of him. The lightning icicle, the combined attack of ice and lightning power Upanishads, headed into the space slit and disappeared. It couldn't cause a scratch on him. Seeing that her attack couldn't affect him, Shanging Yu became more indignant and her eyes got colder. She wanted to mobilize more energy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Right at this moment, they both heard the wind flutter from afar. It seemed like someone was approaching. Shanging Yu was baffled. She retrieved her attack. Pondering for a while, she agilely climbed on a lush tree and hid her body. She wanted to know who would arrive. She knew about this ancient continent more than Shi Yin. Every warrior who could enter the ancient continent was a prominent warrior of the Great Star areas. Although she was arrogant, she knew that she wasn't invincible in this place. Thus, she knew when she needed to hide. Seeing her hide and not attack anymore, Shi Yin discolored. He looked around and hid in between the branches of another tree. Then, he frowned and watched in the direction of the coming noise. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wind howled colder like daggers moving through the air, which was pretty unpleasant to the ears. Rumble. The demonic Rattan that was hiding under the swamp suddenly flew up. It used all the tangled but flexible vines to run away as if it was running from something. The demonic Rattan seemed to recognize something dangerous as if it knew that the one who was coming could harm it, so it had to run in advance from the swamp. Shang Yu and Shi Yin were astounded. They silently put up guard since they knew that the one who was about to arrive wasn't an ordinary warrior. Chapter 1094, The Gu God Sect. Chapter 1094, The Gu God Sect. It is a kind of mysterious object artificially cultivated by special methods, which can be cultivated for many years. It can be large or small. Generally, it is a worm or some kind of insect. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan used its several thousand vines at the same time to fly out of the muddy puddles and run away fast. There were many kinds of spiritual herbs and trees around this area. Murky swamps and clear lakes were situated in this place, which sent thick moisture into the air together with the abundant energy. Swoosh, 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 buzz, buzz. The strange noise was zooming over. Shi Yin and Shang Yu hid in different trees, frowning and waiting. Shortly after, the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, which had just left, returned. Countless vines wiggled on the ground like living tentacles as it hurried to get under the muddy bog where it used to dwell. Shi Yin was surprised. Before he had arrived on this planet, he had listened to Shang Qian talking about Desolate, the ancient continent. This ancient continent didn't have any living creature or races. There was no living being with a body and blood like Monster Clan, Demon Clan, or Human Clan living on this planet. Every 10,000 years, Desolate would open, but later on, it would kick those people out. However, there were many original incipient great herbs and grass. They didn't have blood and flesh, but they did have simple cognition. They were the spirit florists. According to Shang Qian, the spirit florists had a limited lifespan. They couldn't live and cultivate forever like the Monster Clan or Demon Clan. When the plants in this star grew to a particular level, their energy vanished and returned to the ancient continent, which prevented from changing the structure of the continent. The creatures with blood and flesh weren't like that. Taking the Human Clan or the God Clan, for example, as long as their realms were profound enough, their lives could be endless. As long as they were alive, creatures from different races would need energy from Earth and Heaven to cultivate. They would grow unlimitedly. Even if a life star could have more Earth and Heaven energy, sheltering a large number of this kind of experts, its energy would all be consumed eventually and become a dead star in the end. Grace Mainland was also an ancient continent. However, after the immemorial epoch, the antiquity time, and the ancient time, it had given birth to many immemorial creatures, God Clan, and the 10 great clans. Until this moment, its energy had been used up. Desolate seemed to have realized this point pretty early. It was the most selfish planet among the great ancient continents. It was like the woman who has never given birth so she could maintain her beauty, health, and vitality. 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was a spirit plant that had grown in this ancient continent for a long time, so it had a simple consciousness. The 100 Kalpa meant that this plant would take 100 years for each of its Kalpas, and 100 Kalpas were just 10,000 years, which was also the lifespan of the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. It could live only 10,000 years. When its time was over, it had to vanish and its energy would return to the ancient continent. A Sanskrit word meaning a relatively long period of time in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Sometimes, it's used to describe a calamity too. Seeing the demonic Rattan hide under the swamp, Shi Yin frowned at the description of that plant in his book. He felt astounded. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was as rigid as an icy crystal. It had cognition and often hid in the dirty boggy wetland. After it could create 10,000 vines, it could refine the 100 Kalpa soul thread, which was an original incipient grade material that allowed for the refining of the dangerous divine weapon of soul class. Those were the details of Shang-Chen's description of the demonic Rattan in the book. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was tough. Once it hid in the pond it was dwelling in, it was hard to force it out. Putting the book away, Shi Yin glanced at Shang Yin hide on a tree through the gaps between the branches and leaves. The two massive trees they were hiding in were tall and big with thick branches and leaves that shaded a large area. Besides just two people, they could even hide 10 without making any significant traces for the others to discover. This ancient continent had a magical effect on the soul consciousness. Even Shi Yan's soul consciousness couldn't catch the life energy fluctuations around him. He believed that people who came here would encounter the same restriction. In this area, eyes were the sharpest tools to find a target. Thus, hiding in a thick bush didn't sound funny at all. Rattle, rattle. All of a sudden, strange rattling and buzzing noises swarmed over from everywhere. Shi Yin squinted to have a better look. He changed his complexion immediately. His face was now ashen. So many toxic insects and even snakes and scorpions were flying in the sky. Shi Yin could see the green-legged spiders, black scorpions, and many toxic insects move in gray clouds and cover the entire sky like slashing waves. There were more than millions of them. In just a blink of an eye, they packed the area. Those insects and toxic animals had swallowed all kinds of spirit herbs and grass, leaving not even a dried leaf. On their way, all things were cleared. The wetland was exposed. Millions of deadly creatures swarmed over the area like a disgusting, rising tide, while others flew in the sky. SSSSS. SSSSS. A strange whistle reverberated in the place, echoing unceasingly. It seemed that the cry came from a flute that controlled the toxic insects and animals. Shi Yin put on a harsh face and slowly pulled himself together. He watched the oncoming venomous things. He knew that the ancient continent didn't have any of those demonic insects or anything that had blood and flesh. Those things came from some people from outer space like him. The whistle he heard was definitely from someone who was guiding those insects. There was something hiding in the dark somewhere. On the tree opposite Shi Yin, Shang Yin had a cold face. It looked like she found those things disgusting. Instinctively, women were afraid of those little nauseating things. Shang Yin wasn't an exception. Watching the toxic insects and venomous animals coming close, she had released her energy in advance. The cold chi she had released had frozen the entire tree. Demonic insects and venomous animals surged like rising waves on the ground. They started to move and congregate. Gradually, they became a vague face. That was a dark spirit man whose face was filled with pimples. He looked ferociously ugly. Slowly, the demonic insects and toxic animals gathered and formed his body. After a while, he didn't look much different from normal people. He grinned and let out a hoarse laughter. He rose a bony hand from his loose, black robe, pointing at Shang Yin from a far distance. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Countless insects wildly swarmed over. Shortly after, the ancient tree where Shang Yin was hiding was covered with insects. Within 10 seconds, the tree fell. Its branches and leaves were all swallowed. Shang Yin had blue lightning beams crawling on her body. She stood in the middle of the insect pile in disgust. An electric halo expanded from under her feet, keeping those insects away from her. You're the daughter of Shang-Chun and Enlia, and your name is Shang Yin, right? The dark spirit old man looked at her. After a while, he laughed evilly. By the way, the guiding fruits you guys have are from our hollow fearsome star area. Yeah, from us, to be exact. You are from the Gu God Sect of the hollow fearsome star area? Shang Yin discolored, her eyes showing a concealed fear. Hollow fearsome star area was like fantasy mist star area. They were both extremely famous high-level star areas in this vast universe. The general competence of these star areas was mighty. They were also part of a small number of star areas that the God Clan didn't dare to intrude. Compared to Fiery Rain star area and Agate star area, these two star areas were much stronger. However, The main reason that the God Clan didn't dare to touch the hollow fearsome star area was that of the Gu God Sect. This sect was the most mysterious sect in this universe. Members of this sect cultivated evil incantations and witchcraft. They were so intimidating that even the God Clan didn't dare to provoke them. Members of the Gu God Sect had mastered using legendary venomous worms. They could kill people without touching them. They could make the other's soul alter rotten as if it was gnawed by toxic insects. Legends said that one expert from the Great 12 families of the God Clan used to want to attack hollow fearsome star area. However, while he was still trying to convince the experts of his family, his soul altar began to fracture day by day. The God Clan couldn't do anything but watch him die. They didn't know how to heal him. This rang the alarming bell to that God Clan's family. They aborted the thought of dealing with the Gu God Sect. Of course, many people thought that the reason why the God Clan hadn't started a war was that the Gu God Sect had just operated within their hollow fearsome star area. They didn't show their intent of invading other star areas or causing conflict with the God Clan. At the same time, this sect was really strong. The God Clan had planned to invade the other star areas first, and then hollow fearsome star area. Anyway, no one dared to defy the intimidation of the Gu God Sect. This peculiar sect of hollow fearsome star area had a good grasp of the wickedest witchcraft in the entire universe. Even strong incipient God realm experts were wary of them. It's true. I'm from hollow fearsome star area. My name is Shackles. The old man of the Gu God Sect grinned and revealed his white, sharp teeth, which was scary, indeed. Shackles, Shang Yingyu screamed in fear, her face more grimaced. I've heard of you from my mother. You are the strongest expert at incipient God realm of Gu God Sect. Haha, overpraising. Shackles guffawed. His laughter was really unpleasant to the ears. I'm here to take the 100 Kalpa soul thread. Am I bothering you? Not at all. Shang Yingyu's eyes sparkled as she talked faintly. If you don't mind. I'm leaving now so I don't interfere with your business here. Suit yourself. Shackles looked at her and then hissed. Countless toxic insects proactively made her way and let Shang Yingyu go. Shang Yingyu didn't hesitate. She nodded and then walked out of the way. When she was about to get rid of the insect surroundings, she talked while walking away from Shackles. I should make it clear that the one who is hiding in the tree over there is not an acquaintance of mine. You shouldn't think I have some other intention for leaving him here. Then, she accelerated and leaped out of the circle of demonic insects and venomous animal like a lightning strike. Shackles was surprised, laughing evilly. Friend, come out and talk. Shi Yan looked harsh and cold as he watched Shang Yingyu dash away. He took a deep breath and landed away from the tree. Fierce flames burst out from his feet. Many insects and animals proactively avoided him and gave him room to land. The venomous insects hissed as if they were provoked and ready to fight. Shackles' eyes brightened. He was so excited looking at the fiery flame under Shi Yan's feet. Heaven flame of the origin. Haha, it's the flaming origin. Good, so good. You want it? Asked Shi Yan calmly. Shackles nodded continually and said honestly, the flaming origin is rare. This kind of flame is marvelously useful to the disciples of our Gu God Sect. Little buddy, can you give up your favorite thing? Sure can. Squinting, Shi Yan also smiled. He pointed at his head. It's fused with my soul. Kill me and you can get it. Simple, eh? Shackles frowned and was silent. Chapter 1095, Do you have some more? Chapter 1095, Do you have some more? Hundreds of thousands of demonic insects and venomous animals lay on the ground like thick gray mats. They covered 10 square miles of this area. At first glance, they gave people a head-splitting headache. The demonic insects and animals could nibble people's souls. Shackles furrowed his brows, his face dark and hard to probe. His inky black eyes had something flicker like an ignis fatuus, which gave him a malicious look. He didn't attack Shi Yan immediately. Warriors from the Gu God Sect had a unique technique to sense the realm and power of the enemies. They could guess their opponent's powers and realms through observing blood chi, mental status, or even how pink their faces were. They could guess precisely the energy and realm of their opponents. Sha Zhao understood clearly that the realm wasn't the only criteria to assess someone's overall competence. Taking himself as an example, although he had only third sky of ethereal god realm, he believed that he could subdue or even kill first sky of incipient god realm expert. He knew that Shang Yu, who had just left, was also this sort of warrior. As he grasped her profile, he let her go easily. Sha Zhao squinted, his eyes drilling in Shi Yin. Something like invisible soul threads flew out of his eyes and covered Shi Yin like a net made of seaweed. They were trying to explore Shi Yin. Shang Yu didn't actually leave this site. She had used a secret treasure that Shang Chun had given her to make her invisible. She hovered like a faint gray smoke and waited silently by the edge of the insect mass. Her blood qi and soul energy fluctuation were also concealed so that even demonic insects with their great sensibility couldn't find her. Shang Yu's eyelashes shivered. She looked at the two men standing in the middle of the toxic insect formation and waited for something. After a while, she was surprised that she couldn't explain the situation. Sha Zhao was standing with his venomous animals and laughing oddly. "You're joking, right? We come to this ancient continent for our own purposes. We won't fight if it's not necessary. It's no use to anybody and brings no benefit. Okay, let's deal with it this way. I will force the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan out of the swamp and confine it. You will use your heaven flame to refine it. We will share the 100 Kalpa soul thread equally. What do you think?" Shang Yu was startled, her face odd. She was so skeptical looking at the two of them. Sha Zhao was the strongest warrior at incipient god realm of the Gu God Sect. As he could take the guiding fruit to access this ancient continent, it spoke up the fact that the Gu God Sect has trusted him a lot. Shang Yu had heard about how terrifying Sha Zhao was from her mother. Thus, even though she had come here for the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, she had proactively avoided Sha Zhao to prevent causing any conflict with him. Although they were both at third sky of ethereal god realm, Shang Yu wasn't confident that she could defeat Sha Zhao in a fight to the death against him. Thus, she chose to leave. However, Shi Yin had only first sky of ethereal god realm. Since Sha Zhao was strong enough to shoo her away, why was he so friendly to this low warrior? Was he really powerful? Shang Yu had a lot of questions, but she couldn't find an answer. However, when she looked at Shi Yin now, she had changed her attitude. She told herself to be more cautious. Of course, she didn't know what Sha Zhao had seen with the secret technique of the Gu God Sect. This particular technique of the Gu God Sect was called blood-peeping divine technique, which could use the soul consciousness, blood qi, and people's appearances to assess the body's integrity and the profound level of their souls. This technique was famous for its accuracy in this universe. It was also one of the most exquisite techniques of the Gu God Sect. Using the blood-peeping divine technique, Sha Zhao had observed Shi Yan's blood qi, his lean muscles, his heartbeat, and the strange missing soul to make a terrifying final conclusion. His body was like a refined crystal or metal that had been quenched many times. His soul consciousness was as refined as a blood vein. This was the level that a normal incipient god realm couldn't compare to. How could a warrior at first sky of ethereal god realm reach such a level of body integrity and mentality? How could Sha Zhao dare to look down on him? Especially right at the beginning, Shi Yin didn't appear to be fearful. He provoked the other first. This made Sha Zhao more cautious, and he had made up his mind almost instantly. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't fight that young man. As Shang Yu didn't know that Sha Zhao had used an exclusive technique of the Gu God Sect to check Shi Yin, she didn't understand the situation. Share the 100 Kalpa soul thread? Shi Yin chuckled and glanced at the deep place in the muddy pond. He talked naturally. "Can? Then we can work as you've suggested. You will force the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan out of its dwelling, and then I will refine it. Yeah, do it. I'm eager to see the secret techniques of your Gu God Sect." "No problem. Little buddy, wait for me. Let me handle it first." Sha Zhao laughed loudly. A short flute, which had a lot of holes like stars, slid out of his dark sleeve. This flute had a snake skin pattern, making it look archaic and exquisite. "Whistle." "Huh." Sha Zhao squinted and blew the flute. It then sounded like someone whining and crying, releasing ghosts into this world. Under his low-pitched, gloomy melody, the ambience began to cool down. It felt like departed spirits were wandering around with an icy aura and intruding people's sea of consciousness. Shi Yan's indifferent eyes flashed with an icy light. Shang Yingyu, who was still hiding in the dark, also changed her face. She hurried to quiet her mind and urge her power. In Shi Yan's and Shang Yingyu's sea of consciousness, many toxic insects and venomous animals suddenly appeared. They seemed to be formed by the soul consciousness or real souls of those demonic insects and animals. When the old man blew the flute, they got into the other two's sea of consciousness easily and then began to move around. Little buddy, be careful. When I play the demonic sound flute, our little friends won't stay idle, but they won't purposely aim at you. Sha Zhao said, his voice hoarse and rough. Although he was smiling, there was a wicked intent that people couldn't see deep in his eyes. Shi Yan and Shang Yingyu frowned. They knew that even Sha Zhao was being too friendly, and he knew how strong Shi Yan was. He didn't want to let Shi Yan go unharmed. Besides luring the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, he had used the demonic sound flute to control demonic insects and venomous animals to probe Shi Yan's ability. He wanted to test if Shi Yan was as strong as he had estimated. Shi Yan understood it clearly. If he showed that he couldn't bear this attack, Sha Zhao's bloody treatment for him would swarm over immediately and leave him no chance to run away. In his sea of consciousness, countless demonic insects were floating and baring their fangs and claws. All of a sudden, they streamed towards Shi Yan's soul altar. Those tiny, ferocious creatures wanted to nibble at his soul altar and then swallow his soul. Shi Yan was so frightened. He couldn't imagine how evil the Gu God Sect's technique could be. Those little things in his sea of consciousness were just wisps of a soul, but they were more terrifying than real bugs. They could gnaw his soul altar. This kind of witchcraft had him aghast at this moment. He had never experienced anything like this. Shi Yan felt a little clumsy and annoyed. Sha Zhao could connect his soul with those insects and animals. Each of them was his eyes and ears, so he could actually get into Shi Yan's soul. He could also feel what Shi Yan felt. He knew that Shi Yan didn't have any solution to this situation. Sha Zhao smiled faintly. He was so proud of the venomous worm witchcraft of his sect. That year, one of the God Clan experts was killed by this technique. The toxic insects had bitten his soul altar to death. Today, even though this kid was extremely powerful, how could he withstand the soul-eating heaven-venomous worm of the Gu God Sect? The smile on Sha Zhao's face went from concealed to exposed. He looked delighted. After the demonic insects and toxic animals chewed off the soul, they would evolve and transform. The more refined the soul was, the better the benefits that his bugs could have. Sha Zhao pictured those beautiful little things after they evolved. Shang Yingyu wasn't Sha Zhao's target. He sent some dormant bugs to her as a warning for her to not act rashly. Sha Zhao didn't believe what Shang Yingyu had told him. He thought that Shang Yingyu and Shi Yan wanted to refine the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. He believed no one in order to prevent unexpected events. Once Shang Yingyu showed that she wanted to rescue Shi Yan, those idle insects would take action and give Shang Yingyu no extra time or power to help the other. When Sha Zhao did something, he was always meticulous with backup plans. A cloud of demonic insects and toxic animals swarmed over and flooded the tier of power Upanishad in Shi Yan's soul altar. Those tiny bugs buzzed loudly and gave Shi Yan a head-splitting headache. He couldn't gather his thoughts when his sea of consciousness was turbulent. Seeing the toxic bugs and animals approach the tier of powers Upanishad, a freezing energy emerged. An inky black bead that had always stayed in Shi Yan's ethereal extent floated up. Just like a strange, evil eye, it fell into the tier of power Upanishads. It was the poison-dipped cold bead. The poison-dipped cold bead was condensed from the soul of the departed spirit jellyfish. It could swallow extremely toxic things. With the coldness, it could cool down the soul and prevent the warrior from falling into bedevilment. The poison-dipped cold bead slowly emerged. Black light rings rippled like water waves. The demonic insects and toxic animal entering his sea of consciousness screeched in fright. They immediately scattered and tried to avoid the bead. However, Those black light rings had covered them all. No matter how hard they tried to wiggle, they couldn't fly out of Shi Yan's brain. Sha Zhao's face paled. The melody he was playing became more unpleasant and shrill. The mass of toxic bugs under his feet buzzed angrily. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Each of the insects covered by the poison-dipped cold bead's black light in Shi Yan's sea of consciousness turned into a wisp of gray smoke after being drawn into the poison-dipped cold bead. Within seconds, all of the venomous little things that had intruded Shi Yan's sea of consciousness were swallowed. Shi Yan's sea of consciousness resumed its state. Shrinking his pupils, Shi Yan smiled strangely. He parted his lips to give Sha Zhao a compliment. It tastes good. Should be a good tonic for me, though. Thanks for your generous gift. Pausing for a while, he smiled happily. Do you still have some? Sha Zhao was bewildered. After a while, he felt so ashamed and said, I'm terribly sorry. Whenever I play the flute, some of those hot-tempered little buddies can't be controlled. It was just a mistake. Please forgive me. Sha Zhao clasped his hands to apologize, his manner sincere and conscience-stricken. It made Shang Yingyu more astounded as she didn't understand the entire picture of it. Chapter 1096. A Sudden Fatal Attack. Chapter 1096. A Sudden Fatal Attack. I can't thank you enough. Why do you have to say sorry? Shi Yan smiled meaningfully. He begged earnestly, I'm serious. Those insects and toxic animals are beneficial to me. If you agree to give them up, I will be grateful. Sha Zhao discolored. He was cursing under his breath and sending his regards to 18 generations of Shi Yan's family. Until this moment, he wasn't so sure what the black bead that had emerged all of a sudden in Shi Yan's sea of consciousness was. That bead was the nemesis to his toxic little buddies. He was aghast when the bead swallowed all of them. Among his hundreds of thousands demonic insects and toxic animals, there were only several hundred that had evolved to a phase they could intrude people's soul. Each of them was precious and rare. He loved them as if they were his roots of life. The demonic insects and toxic animals with cognition that could intrude the other's soul were the real Gu, the legendary venomous worms. They were also the mediators for many witchcraft practices of the Gu God Sect's witchcraft. It required a lot of efforts and materials to nurture a Gu until it could transform. Gu was the secret of the power of Gu God Sect's disciples. Dozens of his top Gu worms were devoured all by the bead inside Shi Yan's head, which made Sha Zhao almost vomit blood. At the same time, he had to act as if he didn't mean it. He smiled and gave an apology to Shi Yan. It was a big hurt to his pride, which was as painful as someone pricking a piece of meat from his heart. Just a mistake. Really a mistake? Sha Zhao's face twitched, trying to press down the anger in his heart. His eyes were restless, as if he was a volcano that was prevented from erupting. Then forget it. Shi Yan chuckled, squinted, and relaxed. He deliberately urged, Oh, continue to deal with the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, please. After the poison-dipped cold bead had swallowed around a dozen demonic insects, it didn't hurry to return to Shi Yan's ethereal extent. It sank into the center of his sea of consciousness. Wisps of Shi Yan's soul consciousness tied the poison-dipped cold bead like tentacles. His sea of consciousness became cold and peaceful with this cold, tranquilizing bead. After his sea of consciousness had the poison-dipped cold bead, Shi Yan was more sensitive to the energy fluctuation of those demonic insects and venomous animals. He could recognize them and capture their life energy fluctuation precisely. He could even know how toxic they were and how much venom they had in their bodies. This cheered up Shi Yan immediately. He suddenly understood that something had been activated after the poison-dipped cold bead had devoured Sha Zhao's venomous little friends. The poison-dipped cold bead came from the departed spirit jellyfish, which was the most toxic and mysterious creature in this world. It lived by swallowing poisonous substances or venoms, which made it a source of poisonous substances. Most of the demonic insects and toxic animals that Sha Zhao had been feeding had extreme toxins and venoms. People who touched them couldn't have a decent death. Some toxins could enter the sea of consciousness directly, and even the god experts couldn't do anything to prevent it. However, To the poison-dipped cold bead, they weren't troublesome. They were tonics. Thus, something changed in the poison-dipped cold bead as it decided to stay in Yan's sea of consciousness. It seemed like the bead was waiting for more insects to feast on it. Squinting and feeling the change in his sea of consciousness, Yan smiled brightly and calmly urged Sha Zhao. Sha Zhao gritted his teeth and gave an unnatural smile. I'm on it. I'm on it. Sha Zhao continued to play his demonic sound flute. The low and forlorn melody had driven the toxic insects and animals crazy. They dashed like fierce sand flowing into a deep place in the muddy pond where the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was hiding. In several breaths, insects had filled that murky pond. Those venomous insects wiggled, which could tingle people's scalps and drill deep into the pond. At the same time, they chewed off the plants nearby. Their small eyes flared with harsh, green light. All of them were so excited like beasts smelling blood. All bared their tiny sharp fangs, dancing and stirring the entire swamp. Some strange rumbling noises arose from the swamp. They were the sounds that the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan caused when it wiggled the vines. Apparently, the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was dealing with those dangerous toxic insects. Sha Zhao's face was cold. Deep in his eyes was dark green light. The demonic sound flute he was playing shrilled ear-piercingly like ghosts crying and whining. Suddenly, he opened his mouth, gushing out poisonous smokes in many colors. The toxic vapors hovered like cotton clouds above the wetland. Strange fluids dropped from the vapors and seeped into the venomous insects and animals inside the pond. Those insects and animals became wilder and tried to gnaw the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. Slowly, vines emerged from the water and twisted like slithering snakes. The Rattan was trying hard to get rid of something. Shang Yingyu was hiding in the dark, her beautiful eyes bright. She seized the chance when all the insects were gathering inside the swamp to attack the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan to approach this area once again. With the protection of her secret treasure, she could avoid Yan's and Sha Zhao's sight. Shang Yingyu was dumbstruck when she saw the swamp where the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was emerging from, little by little. She saw hundreds of thousands of insects creeping on each vine of the Rattan. She frowned in disgust. She felt her scalp become numb, and that crowd of toxic bugs and animals made her nauseate. She forced herself to calm down and used her cold energy to wake up her mind. She was preparing something discreetly. The ring on her porcelain wrist slowly glowed, transforming to a rod and coiling around her arm. She was ready to attack in any minute. Looking at the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan being tied, she was secretly excited. Her round, milky breasts thrust out and bounced magnificently. However, no one could see her glamour at this moment. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was tied and was leaving its bog. Those tiny insects and toxic animals were like its archenemies. Several thousand vines of the Rattan had survived several hundred Kalpas, but now they were powerless. The insects had chewed off all the thorns on its vines. Its consciousness was vanishing. Sha Zhao exhaled. He stopped playing the demonic sound flute and laughed contentedly. He was about to tell Yin to refine the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. However, at this moment, he suddenly got alerted. His face grimaced in just a flash. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 wall bones were gloomy and quiet. They were crystal clear and slowly emerging from 3 different narrow slits. Just like 3 lightning strikes, they thrust towards Sha Zhao in just a blink of an eye. Sha Zhao discolored, raising his hands to counter. He could never have imagined that Yin would choose this moment to attack. When he played the demonic sound flute, he was wholly concentrated. Sha Zhao had put up his guard all the time because in his mind if Yin wanted to attack him, he would seize the chance when he was playing the flute. At that point, he had to use his mind to control the insects to entangle the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. He thought it was the best chance for Yin to attack him. He even pretended to reveal his weakness as he had a perfect plan and just needed Yin to attack him all of a sudden. Unfortunately, Yin didn't do anything but stay calm while Sha Zhao was playing his demonic sound flute. Sha Zhao had waited for a long time with his intense nerves, but nothing had happened in the end. When the melody from the demonic sound flute ceased, Shi Yin was watching the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. Sha Zhao thought that Shi Yin had actually wanted the Rattan. Seeing everything settle down, Sha Zhao calmed down his tense nerves and waited for Shi Yin to refine the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. And while Shi Yin was doing that, he was going to attack him discreetly. However, right at this split of time, Shi Yin had taken action. Sha Zhao didn't put up his guard. The 3 bone thorns slashed the void like lightning strikes and stabbed him directly in his chest. They were so fast that he couldn't even think of how to resist. Puff, puff, puff. 3 sounds echoed when the sharp weapons thrust into his flesh. The beautiful chest plate of Sha Zhao's armor was broken. 3 strange blood flowers bloomed in Sha Zhao's chest, and they could see the vessels and muscles wiggling inside. Some demonic insects in his body were trying to use their tiny sharp claws to hook and pull the tip of the bone thorns. They were trying to stop the bone thorns and not let them stab his heart. Those were the life-devin goo worms he had fed with his own blood and flesh. Sha Zhao spurted blood, his face ashen. As his body was damaged, his life-divine goo worms were also injured. Immediately, his essential organs were wounded. So cruel, Sha Zhao shouted, his face cold and harsh. Shi Yin contemplated and didn't say a word. His face was cold and sinister like a saber. His god body shook hard. A furious, murderous aura shot up into the sky. His joints cracked as the energy in his body rose like big waves. Right at the moment the energy in his body increased massively, he suddenly had a bloody sword in his hand. Leaping through the air, he slashed Sha Zhao. The entire sky was dyed red because of the massive sword. A quiet, bloodthirsty pressure suddenly swarmed over. Sha Zhao was scared out of his wits. Turi. He opened his mouth to spurt out a mouthful of filthy blood with a lot of pieces of meat where tiny venomous insects were hiding. Those insects had bone sabers and small wings. They screeched while eating up the meat he had spurted. Their bodies were ballooning at a speed that naked eyes could observe. They became golden round. The toxic insects swelled and became ferocious. They plunged towards Shi Yin one after another. When they approached him, they exploded and created an extremely intimidating energy attack, which stirred up the void around Shi Yin. The toxic insects were as big as soya beans, but after they had eaten Sha Zhao's meat, they burst off their body and created energy tornadoes that prevented Shi Yin from approaching Sha Zhao to continue his attacks. Sha Zhao's face was bleeding as if someone had used a razor and cut his face. He looked as ferocious as the devil. He screeched pitifully. The life-divine goo worms in his chest tried to force the 3 bone thorns out of his body. Immediately, Sha Zhao jumped onto the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, and countless insects and small animals covered his body. They scattered, running away and immersing into dirty ponds here and there. After dozens of seconds, hundreds of thousands of toxic insects and venomous animals had disappeared, leaving only the explosions of the small, round insects that Sha Zhao had released. After I recover, I will let you know how it tastes like when you have 10,000 insects nibbling your heart. Sha Zhao's shrill came from underground and faded out. While he was screaming, he had run far away. Apparently, he was frightened, indeed. Chapter 1097, Panic and Upheaval. Chapter 1097, Panic and Upheaval. Sha Zhao's chest was hurt severely. His life-divine goo was also damaged. As his toxic demonic insects couldn't attack Shi Yan's soul altar, he didn't dare to tangle with Shi Yin anymore. When the situation turned bad, he resolutely ran away. Hundreds of thousands of toxic insects squirmed into the dark swarm and drilled thousands of meters deep into the ground, scattering everywhere. The round insects continually exploded, creating violent shockwaves. Shi Yin was inside the energy tornadoes while starlight chains were patrolling around him and protecting his body. After the exploding energy ended, the bodies of those insects turned into ashes and they vanished. And now, the other toxic insects were running underground to escape. In the swamp in front of Shi Yin, the vines of the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan were moving as if they were recovering. A significant amount of earth and heaven energy from everywhere congregated at the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, which had an amber hue that naked eyes could see. Since the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was native to this ancient continent, it could heal itself by gathering earth and heaven energy. Right now, it was having a speedy recovery. Frowning, he glanced at the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, and Shi Yan's eyes turned cold. The murderous aura on his body changed quietly. A desolate, dead intent that was as cold as ice suddenly oozed out from his body and covered every corner around his body. This kind of deadly aura was able to seep into the ground despite the thick layer of soil. Since the other spirit herbs and grass were all eaten and this ancient continent didn't have living creatures, Shi Yan could urge his power without any barrier. His death power Upanishad moved. He became a corpse without any vitality. He gave people a deadly heavy ambience. Shang Yu was still hiding. She wanted to refine the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan, but her heart suddenly beat faster. The energy in her body was subdued. She felt so uncomfortable. Shang Yu quietly sensed for a while. She could feel that her vitality was affected as the full blood chi was reduced. She changed her complexion in fear. She didn't dare to sense further. She gathered her spirit to withstand the power of the death power Upanishad. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It felt like a wind of death had just blown through the area. The temperature dropped, and it became chilled to the bone. A strange noise echoed from underground. Dozens of thousands of demonic insects were dragging him moving underground. Although it was still the murky and dirty wetland, countless insects had dug up the passage so he could move freely underground. Many insects were glowing in ice blue and dark green lights, lighting up the dark subterranean world. The life goo worms were wiggling inside Sha Zhao's chest, their small claws weaving like the skillful craftsman patching his wounds, making them stop bleeding. Bottom, bottom, bottom. Sha Zhao's heart suddenly beat faster. His soul altar swayed hard. Wisps of soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness turned into smoke. His face changed into a green hue color, his eyes bulging. He clutched his chest and gasped for his breath. He couldn't help but curse loudly. Deep underground not far from him, many insects and venomous animals were dead, their bodies stiff. When each of his demonic insects or venomous animals were killed, Sha Zhao felt like he was pricked by a needle. In that short moment, Sha Zhao felt needles thrusting into his flesh thousands of times. This experience wasn't pleasant at all. Sha Zhao clutched his chest, his face purple. He winced and bared his teeth like an ugly monster. Blood continued to trickle down from his mouth. He suddenly felt an extreme fear. A sharp energy wave expanded and reached him from above his head. Sha Zhao's dark eyes lit up for seconds as he was sensing. Suddenly, he roared and screamed. Grrrr. Just like a beast roaring in a low-pitched voice, countless insects gathered around his body, aligning their bodies and linking with each other. Those insects used their tiny claws and fangs to connect to each other, bleeding in different colored blood. More than 10,000 insects had congregated into a monster that looked somehow like Sha Zhao. That monster gathered the energy of blood and flesh from the insects and angled its hand into an iron-like anchor, soaring into the sky. Shi Yan didn't dare to linger. He spurted out blood that then turned into blood mist, covering the entire insects and small animals around him. It was an evil technique of the Gu God Sect that was used to cover the aura of demonic insects and venomous animals. A blood light slashed down from the sky and fell like a meteor, which violently attacked the anchor that the monster had created. Shortly after, the anchor was shattered. The body of the monster, which looked like Sha Zhao, was dismembered. It turned into many demonic insects and toxic animals that ran helter-skelter. Shi Yan stayed by the muddy pond and squinted to sense. He couldn't catch a glimpse of those insects Ori. On this ancient continent, the coverage and sensibility of the soul consciousness were limited. He couldn't lock Sha Zhao's position accurately. He could only guess his general direction by the number of insects gathering. Shi Yan guessed that Sha Zhao was where there was the largest crowd of insects. He was correct, indeed. However, Sha Zhao was cunning enough, and the witchcraft techniques of the Gu God Sect were extraordinary, so they could hide all the insects. Shi Yin had chased after him to this area. However, he could only shake his head and sigh as he found that he couldn't force Sha Zhao to get out of his spot. As Sha Zhao was a third sky of ethereal god realm expert from the Gu God Sect, he was a dangerous character on this ancient continent. At the same time, Sha Zhao was interested in the flaming origin in Shi Yan's soul. Shi Yan had figured this out right from the beginning. He knew that it wouldn't go well with Sha Zhao. Thus, he tried to attack Sha Zhao when he wasn't prepared. The three bone thorns had the sharpness of space. Even Sha Zhao, who was at third sky of ethereal god realm, couldn't endure them. Since Sha Zhao's competence was limited, Shi Yan wanted to seize the chance and kill him. However, everything ended with his failure. After Shi Yan found the insects moving further away underground to disappear, he decided to return and collect the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. An azure light flashed when he caught a glimpse of beauty. The light blue lightning was clear and pure. It disappeared into a hole leading to the underground like a rainbow. Shi Yan was baffled for a while. He walked neither fast nor slow towards that area, his face astounded. That big hole was caused by Shi Yan's bloody sword. It was as big as a basketball yard and was several hundred meters deep underground. It was dark and quiet. Many murky streams were running into the deep hole and carrying leaves and spirit herbs with them. At first glance, the hole was a chaotic area. A clear blue light glowed inside the hole. It was as bright as the moon, and it slightly shook his ethereal extent. He concentrated on sensing. He found that the dazzling star in his ethereal extent was bouncing. It became restless in his ethereal extent. That star was evolved from the star nucleus and stayed in his ethereal extent, becoming a special attraction of his ethereal extent. His understanding of the ethereal extent wasn't deep enough. Until now, he hadn't known what was special about his ethereal extent. However, after he had arrived in this ancient continent, his co-soul had continued to pour energy into his ethereal extent. He could feel the extent enlarging together with the star in it. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As he had felt the change of the ethereal extent, he wanted to take a better look at it. Suddenly, he heard some strange noise, so he turned his head to see. In the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan's general direction, Shi Yan saw the flame burning high and torrentially. Although it wasn't the heaven flame, it wasn't less scorching. It was rumbling and burning the Rattan, dyeing the entire sky in a fiery red color that looked like the sunset. Someone was burning the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. He understood immediately. His eyes rolled. He couldn't help but snort. He knew who did that, his face darkening. Looking at the big hole in front of him, Shi Yan found that the blue light disappeared and the star in his ethereal extent didn't vibrate anymore. Turning his head around, he discovered that the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan was being burned. After hesitating, he took a deep breath and released his energy to dash towards its direction. Dash. Digi. Fiery flame happens over there. In the corner of the swamp, a muscular man was holding an enormous hammer that was so rigid. He shouted, his voice like a bronze bell ringing. This beefy man was tall and broad. His gold hammer was as big as a windmill with sharp metal spikes, giving people an intimidating look. However, the man who he called Big Brother was a lanky but good-looking one. The smile on the corner of his mouth was so charming. He was wearing gorgeous, richly ornamented garments that were obviously customized. It had so many pieces of beautiful jade decorating his hem. It gave him both elegant and imposing looks at the same time. This man was indeed particular. That furious flaming energy will draw the attention of many people. Yeah, it should be something good then. The handsome man smiled. He licked his lips, his eyes suddenly turning red. Let's go hunting. Haha, it's so good. The muscular man thundered and dashed with his gigantic hammer. The other side of the swamp. Inside a dirty puddle, the mud in the wetland moved all of a sudden. A humanoid creature slowly emerged while mud oozed down its body. His eyes were so sharp and icy like sabers. He rose from the middle of the mud pond like a clay statue, coldly watching the red sky over there. After a while, He swayed back to the dirty pond like a white eel swimming inside the mud. His body was as soft and flexible as the snake. While moving through the murky pond, he didn't cause any ripple. The wet mud splashed, and its water evaporated immediately. Smoke and fire burst up to the red sky, creating a massive lantern that covered the entire 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. Not far from the Rattan was the elegant gait of Yu. She was frowning while a blood-red ring on her porcelain wrist fired scorching flames at the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. Many vines of the Rattan were dried and cracked. The flames burned them down. Slowly, something appeared from the cracked vines. Yu's beautiful eyes had a strange light. She was stirred up. The 100 Kalpa soul thread was crucial to her. This time she got to this ancient continent, she must find many things. The 100 Kalpa soul thread was one of them. She had to try to get it at any cost. Thus, even though she knew that Yin could return at any minute, she couldn't control her stirring desire. She immediately showed herself and used the secret treasures to refine the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. However, she didn't expect that her rushing actions could make the sky look like it was burning. It had alarmed some thugs who couldn't be here after just a short moment. Chapter 1098. Forcefully Seize. Chapter 1098. Forcefully Seize _ The sky was vivid and red with flames, shooting up into the sky. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan's bark slowly cracked, revealing the hairline ice threads. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan had so many vines. After they were refined, there appeared countless ice-blue threads that were magnificently beautiful silk fibers in a fulgent blue crystal hue. Those silky threads carried a faint soul energy fluctuation. They were magical, original, incipient-grade materials. Yu's eyes were brilliant. Her face was filled with joy. She continued to burn the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan while taking out some rhombus crystals. The rhombus crystals looked like long, narrow eyes that flew out of her white hand, falling towards the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. The lozenge crystals moved quietly, rolling the 100 Kalpa soul threads around like when people rolled fibers around a core and connected many fibers together. Watching the crystals rolling the 100 Kalpa soul thread, Yu's beautiful eyes were filled with thrill. She pulled herself together and tried to burn more vines. As she knew Yin could come back at any minute, she hurried to finish the Rattan to avoid Yin's sudden attack. While hiding in the dark to observe Yin and Sha Zhao's battle, her attitude towards Yin changed completely. When she first met Yin, she didn't put him in her eyes because he had only first sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base. Before they had entered the ancient continent, she had made up her mind to not leave Yin in peace. And she did that. As Yin had proactively avoided her at first, she was more certain that Yin's realm was low as well as his competence. This ancient continent had many high-level ethereal god realm experts, and Yin was at the lowest level of the food chain. She thought that everybody could bully him. However, Yin had beaten Sha Zhao up. Of course, she knew that Yin had used cunning tricks. He had ambushed Sha Zhao first. Anyway, Sha Zhao was defeated. Moreover, Yin was cruel and malicious. Seeing that his first attack didn't finish the enemy, he had tried to eradicate Sha Zhao with more attacks when Sha Zhao was hurt severely. She realized that Yin wasn't easy to deal with. While collecting the 100 Kalpa soul thread, Yu was vigilant and ready to counterattack in any minute. All of a sudden, her soul shivered in fear. Yu's face changed in fright. She looked gingerly and focused while lightning beams creeping on her graceful body like dragons. She looked like she had electric rings illuminating her body. A flow of cold and desolate aura flooded from everywhere and ran directly into her hearts and sea of consciousness. Yu was shaken. Inside her head arose a bloody, mountain-like word that said, "Die." It furiously barged on her sea of consciousness. That word, "die," was bloody and carrying the energy of brutal, crazy, bloodthirsty feelings, which had struck her mind. She was baffled, and it was as if her soul had been smashed. Her energy was running like water overflowing the broken dike. Murderous intent intruded her brain. occupying her tier of power Upanishad and making her flustered. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning arose in her ethereal extent. Billions of lightning strikes directly drilled through her tier of power Upanishad and sea of consciousness to act on the word, die, and to counterattack the flooding negative emotions. Countless icicles were floating and stirring in the cold and dark sea in her ethereal extent. They sent the icy energy into her soul to wake it up. Her beautiful eyes sparkled. She touched her forehead. The ethereal extent made of billions of lightning strikes arose above her head and covered the entire vivid red sky. Lightning strikes turned into wild dragons, roaring and soaring bravely as if they wanted to destroy earth and heaven. This flaming piece of land appeared to have the lightning disaster, which could destruct the entire area. Thousands of massive electric dragons were roaring and fiercely plunging towards a young man who was sauntering from a distance. That young man was Yin. He used the death power Upanishad with the negative emotions and intruded Shang Yingyu's head. He knew that he would receive the most violent attack, but he had underestimated Shang Yingyu. Seeing countless beams of lightning dashing over, his body felt like it had become a massive heart that throbbed grumblingly. The immortal demon blood in his body moved like liquid steel. It gave him a massive amount of energy. With this energy, he calmed his mind and generated a space barrier. Each ripple was a layer of space confinement. Yin was making many hand seals and dozens of space, confining layers floated up. The massive lightning dragons stormed over and tried their best to tear and destroy the layers of space confinements. However, they slowed down. Lock. He lifted his head and pointed at the sea of fire where flames rolled torrentially from Shang Yingyu's secret treasures. Instantaneously, the flames were frozen and didn't dance anymore. Yan's 10 fingers wiggled, pulling the rhombus crystals, which were taking the 100 Kalpa soul thread, towards him. Yan had taken the spoils that Shang Yingyu had to work hard to get. Boom! A lightning rod tore the sky, lashing over from a far distance. Yan's space barriers were ripped off in just a blink of an eye. The soul consciousness with space energy moved with trouble, while Yan's sea of consciousness was chaotic. The tier of powers Upanishad was shaking hard. Yan felt like some small knives were giving him terrible pain and cutting his soul. Yan's trembled, his face dark and cold. Worthy of your third sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base. An attack from Shang Yingyu's divine, lightning weapon had hurt him instantly. Many wisps of his soul consciousness were destroyed shortly, making his soul feeble for a moment. The power of a third sky of ethereal god realm warrior and her divine weapon piled up, which included the ethereal extent. Yin couldn't bear the overwhelming attack. Hand back the 100 Kalpa soul thread. Shang Yingyu shivered and said through her gritted teeth. Billions of shadows of that lightning rod appeared above Yan's head. It weaved and made a thick mesh net, putting pressure on him with the energy that could kill all kinds of creatures. Even an ordinary incipient god realm expert couldn't resist this strike. Warriors who could enter the ancient continent were all top famous ethereal god realm experts of the great star areas. Usually, they were at third sky of ethereal god realm, but sometimes their powers surpassed their realms. Shang Yingyu was one of those warriors. She had a divine weapon too. When she struck her attack with her third sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base, the lethality was earth-shattering. Yan's face darkened. Murderous aura gushed out from his body like a blood sea. The blood chi in his body could be compared to that of immemorial beasts that were extremely abundant. He was urging his immortal demon blood to transform to the immortal demon body. Shang Yingyu was so powerful. Deji, this woman is really strong. A voice thundered from a far distance. Then, they saw a giant gold hammer with a lot of spikes like a golden hedgehog fly towards them. After each second, the giant hammer's energy was doubled. The energy in that giant hammer, which was as big as a windmill, could blow off a small mineral star. Boom! The massive hammer fell like a meteor piercing through the atmosphere, hitting on the shadows of the lightning rod in the sky. The void was shattered when lightning beams and gold lights bloomed. The ground cracked and countless deep ditches appeared. A beefy man came in laughing. He wore golden armor which made him look like a heavenly guardian. The sharp metal chi emitted from his body, which could pierce through any rigid things of this world. Daiji, it's the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. The muscular guy blinked and laughed loudly, his voice like the sound of a big bell. Interesting. As Shang Yingyu was attacking Shi Yin, he had the option to wait for them. After the two of them were hurt, he could appear and clear the scene. However, he didn't do that. He had interfered when Shang Yingyu had urged her energy to the utmost. It seemed like the brawny man wanted to show off his tyrannical, brutal face. That man looked big and rough, but he wasn't too old. He had a stubborn and wild appearance. He stomped the ground grumblingly like an avalanche. He rose his hand and grabbed the gigantic hammer. He guffawed at Shang Yingyu. You're strong. I like strong girls. You're sick? Shang Yingyu scolded, her face cold. She turned to Shi Yin. Hand me that thing. If you don't blame me for what's going to happen. The 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan belongs to our brothers. We found it, but we have some personal business that we haven't taken care of yet, said an elegant, handsome man while he was strolling toward them. Shi Yin felt funny as he didn't know whether to cry or smile. He looked at the brawny man appearing from nowhere and paused his energy accumulation. Then, Shi Yin watched the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. After Shang Yingyu's fire had burned it down, the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan now existed in the form of many gray-blue threads fluttering around the area. At the area where the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan used to be, the ground was covered with many fulgent, sparkling silky fibers. They were the 100 Kalpa soul thread, which was releasing some faint soul energy fluctuations. The 100 Kalpa soul thread were thin and tiny. There were more than 10,000 fibers. Shang Yingyu had collected 1/5 of them, which Shi Yin had already stashed in his fantasy sky ring. There were still a lot of them on the ground. However, it wasn't easy to get them all. Recently, when he held the 100 Kalpa soul thread in his hand, his tier of powers Upanishad had some magical vibes that proved that the 100 Kalpa soul thread had some wonderful effects to the tier of powers Upanishads. Shi Yin paid more attention to the 100 Kalpa soul thread. There are still 4/5 of the 100 Kalpa soul thread. If you want, come take it. Shi Yin said calmly and shook his head at Shang Yingyu. You can't take things in my hands. If you want, you can take those remaining on the ground, but I'm sure you will struggle to get them. Nah, it's not true, said the beautiful man who had just arrived. Pausing for a while, he frowned. Someone can't hold it anymore. Just like a wisp of the departed spirit, he gloomily floated and bobbed towards the 100 Kalpa soul thread. A frightening pale halo expanded from his eyes as his aura was extremely dangerous. Someone is underground. The beefy man laughed indifferently. Well, it's funnier with more people. No matter how many come, that thing will belong to me and my Daiji. Shi Yin frowned and glanced in a direction. He found a mud statue slowly emerge from a puddle on the ground with only a pair of cold eyes without human emotions. Chapter 1099. Soul Kalpa. Chapter 1099. Soul Kalpa _ The mud statue was hidden inside the swamp. When Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu were fighting, it had started to collect the 100 Kalpa soul thread. When the unknown brothers came, the mud statue stopped for a while, but it couldn't hold its desire for a long time. It tried to collect more of the 100 Kalpa soul thread right after that. The way he was collecting the 100 Kalpa soul thread wasn't similar to Shang Yingyu's method. The mud statue opened his mouth to spurt out a muddy brook, which acted like a small, soft hand that grabbed the sparkling blue-ice silky threads and shoved them into his mouth. This mud statue seemed to have mastered the power of mud and sand, especially the powers of earth. As he was swallowing some of the 100 Kalpa soul thread, the amount of 100 Kalpa soul thread on the ground was reduced. The good-looking man aimed at him right after he made the first utterance with Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin. It was because the mud statue had high productivity in collecting the 100 Kalpa soul thread. If he had more time, there would be nothing left for those people to harvest. The good-looking man was not the only one who could feel something wrong. Shang Yingyu also gave up Shi Yin and dashed towards the mud statue, her face indignant. Only the brawny young man could still grin. He looked indifferent, as if he had absolute belief in his big brother. Splosh, splosh, splosh. Strange but marvelous energy surged torrentially from the puddles around them. The immense gray energy of Earth burst off like a divine brush that drew the giant hand that could shade the entire sky. That massive hand was made of wet mud and moist soil. It was the anger of the god of Earth with earth power. Right when it appeared, the ground under people's feet shook violently. Everybody trembled hard. They felt their chests being hammered, making them feel like suffocating. Someone was using the power of Earth and sending the vibes through the ground to enter people's souls. Apparently, the one who was using Earth power was that mud statue. With a pair of cold and indifferent eyes, he glanced at the good-looking man who was dashing towards him. 6 gigantic hands like massive mountain ranges emerged with the palms facing the others and arms jutting directly from the ground. Their 5 fingers were gray with dust and tremendous power, which could even crush the entire mountain. 6 massive hands were moving in the swamp as if they had the soul. 30 fingers created the strange hand seal that seemed to seal this entire planet. The handsome man floated like a ghost. He squinted and beamed a faint smile. A fan appeared in his hand, which was neither made of gold nor jade. It was made of some unknown material. The exquisite drawings on the fan of the mountain and lakes were changing continually. Shortly after, the drawings on the fan were like thousands of flowers blooming inside a quiet valley. The drawings switched between mountainous areas to fairy-like castles. This fan was as magical as an ethereal extent. The changing images on the fan stopped. Eventually, clear blue rivers appeared on the fan, which was meandering like spirit snakes and elongating everywhere to unknown regions. When Yin pulled himself together to watch, he didn't see the fan anymore. He saw heavenly blue rivers on the horizon of the swamp. Those heavenly rivers were several thousand meters long, and they were so crystal clear that he could even see their bottom, which had many shining rocks. It gave people a peaceful feeling in their souls. Boom! All of a sudden, the rivers interchanged, impressively pouring from the horizon. People could see heavenly rivers like blue ribbons powerfully shooting at the mountain-like hands. A chain of tremors that could shake the mountain swarmed over. Yin stood far from them but still saw his body shake hard. He was even blown away. Gradually, he couldn't see the area of that fierce battle anymore. He could only see the increasing earth-shaking energy fluctuations. Closing his eyes, Yin sensed for a while. All of a sudden, he opened his eyes and dashed away resolutely. The realm and power of the mud statue and the good-looking man weren't something ordinary warriors could compare to. They weren't weaker than Yu. They could be even stronger than her. He was at first sky of ethereal god realm. In Agate's star area, he dared to fight against an ordinary first sky of incipient god realm. However, the warriors in this area were all geniuses of the great star areas around the universe. Their real competences had even surpassed their realms. Yin knew both the mud statue and the handsome man was as strong as him. Still, there were Yu and the muscular man with his hammer who wasn't weaker than Yu. The 4 people who were competing for the 100 Kalpa soul thread were all brilliant warriors. He didn't want to stir up this murky puddle. Making up his mind, he wasn't hesitant to leave. Flying like a dark light, Yin glided over the swamp and got further away from that area. On this planet, the Sea of Consciousness was affected. They needed good eyesight to find the hiding enemy. Once he could go far enough, his opponents wouldn't be able to use the soul consciousness to lock his location or find him. He left silently, so when the other 4 found his aura disappear, he traveled a far distance already. Thus, he wasn't hurried. The ancient continent kept many marvelous treasures, and the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan wasn't the only original incipient grade materials. There were more awaiting him to find. He shouldn't risk his life so early. Shortly after, he left the battle site and moved gingerly towards the massive hole that the other had created before. His thoughts flickered. He took out the lozenge crystals with some of the beautiful ice blue 100 Kalpa soul thread. Blue light continued to sparkle from the crystals with the faint soul energy that had surprised people. Holding the book that Shang Chun had given him, he frowned and studied it carefully. After a while, his soul consciousness flickered again. The 100 Kalpa soul thread was the soul threads of the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan. It was somehow similar to the soul threads of the departed spirit jellyfish. However, their functions were different. According to Shang Qin's document, the 100 Kalpa soul thread could amend a soul altar. Warriors at a profound level could have their soul altar crack as a result of a serious damage. The soul was the basic foundation of a warrior, and the soul altar was where his essence, chi, spirit, and soul gathered. It was the most important thing. When the soul altar had cracks, the warrior would find it hard to increase his or her realm further. His or her power Upanishad would even shatter. When a warrior fell into bedevilment condition, his soul altar would be damaged or even end up collapsing. Taking the former pavilion masters of Potion and Tool Pavilion as examples, their soul altars collapsed as the result of their failures in refining and forging treasures. They had to turn into a flow of a drifting soul to survive, which vanished into the universe after some time. The 100 Kalpa soul thread could patch the cracks. If they had more 100 Kalpa soul thread, together with the other original incipient grade materials, they could rebuild a soul altar. It was the same as rebirthing. The warriors with soul altars all had a profound realm, but the 100 Kalpa soul thread was really precious to them as it could fix their soul altar. In the Great Star areas, the 100 Kalpa soul thread was a peculiarly rare item that was scarce and in high demand. It was the top treasure that many people had yearned for. The 100 Kalpa soul thread had another function. It could urge the natural Kalpa in the ethereal extent. It could make the powers Upanishad attack the ethereal extent to quench it, which would help warriors increase their usage of the abilities of their powers Upanishads. While the warriors were battling others, the ethereal extent could be a big help as it could change their powers Upanishad to increase their attacks and their overall competence. The ethereal extent was unrivaled and marvelous. Until now, nobody had explored all the mysterious abilities of it. The 100 Kalpa soul thread took 100 years for a Kalpa, and it would have a disaster for each Kalpa. After 100 Kalpas, it had lived for 10,000 years. At that time, the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan could have intelligence. After each Kalpa, it could generate some 100 Kalpa soul thread. Thus, the 100 Kalpa soul thread could also make the ethereal extent experience the Kalpa, which would quench it and make it tougher. Shi Yin blinked. Dozens of fulgent soul threads on the lozenge crystals flew out and entered his eyes and his sea of consciousness. They traveled through the tier of power Upanishad to reach the ethereal extent. They were about to get into the ethereal extent. Shi Yan's ethereal extent had a big change. The starry sea inside his fantasy world suddenly had many lightning strikes, sharp wind blades, windstorm, weaving lights, and surging flames. All the powerful energies were burst out at the same time, wreaking havoc in his ethereal extent. They seemed to attempt to destroy his ethereal extent. Shi Yan's face changed. He didn't think much, but he found a murky pond. He entered and hid several thousand meters underground. Thunderbolts struck inside his ethereal extent, while fire surged up to the sky. Wind blades and ice mountains also attacked everywhere. Countless attacks made of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, storm, ice, and lightning had struck Shi Yan's ethereal extent directly. It seemed to tear his sea of stars, causing an intense pain that almost broke Shi Yan's spirit. Taking a deep breath to gather his mind, Shi Yan used his space, death and life, and star powers Upanishads as the basic foundation to change and generate different abilities of the three powers Upanishad to resist the madly violent energies in his ethereal extent. This was a Kalpa to Shi Yan's ethereal extent, also a quenching time of nature to his powers Upanishads he must undergo. The 100 Kalpa soul thread could trigger the ethereal extent's Kalpa to strictly train the soul. If he could get over this great challenge, his soul would be incredibly strong. His soul altar could transform, and he could even reach the new realm. Initially, he came here to find the blue light that had given him a strange feeling. Because he had underestimated the power of the 100 Kalpa soul thread, he had fallen into a passive situation that forced him to get underground to cultivate. However, the battle on the ground between Shang Yingyu and the others were so furious that they weren't free to mind him. Under the swamp, Yin was covered in layers of wet, doughy mud like a ball. From time to time, that muddy ball shivered and released immense life energy fluctuation. Yan's body didn't have a significant change, but his soul altar was changing dramatically as his ethereal extent was like a ruin that different energies were hitting hard and bringing deadly dangers. His thoughts changed. The brilliant galaxy ethereal extent gathered countless twinkling stars that created a star area, which vaguely looked like a bow and an arrow. It was so massive and imposing like a mountain, a river, or even a beast. That galaxy changed continually as if it wanted to showcase the marvelous power of nature. The star bow and arrow emerged, shooting out a vivid bright arrow that was made of many meteors. In just a blink, it crushed all the mountains and rivers in his ethereal extent. The star power Upanishad changed continuously by his thoughts, releasing incredible lethality. Yin was focused and trying to learn the magical features of the power to catch a glimpse of the star power Upanishad. He wanted to use the star power Upanishad to withstand the Kalpa of his ethereal extent and train his will. Chapter 1100. Break the Shackles. Chapter 1100. Break the Shackles _ In the other corner, the peculiar man with mud covering his body suddenly sank into the ground. Disappearing with him was half of the amount of the 100 Kalpa soul thread. 6 giant hands pressed down like imposing mountains that sent away the energy that could seal the entire sky. The shining rivers crossing the sky moved like sparkling chains with sharp auras that attempted to wrap the imposing hands. Thunderclaps echoed while a lightning rod danced in the middle of the sky. The beefy man had a large build, and it was as tough as iron and steel. With the giant hammer in his hand, he grinned and stayed aside. He didn't want to join this battle, anyway. The good-looking man frowned and looked at the 6 imposing hands disappearing into the ground. He sensed for a while and then said, "This man is dangerous." "Deji, you can't hold him," shouted the muscular man. "He cultivates earth power Upanishad and he knows the surroundings well. His energy and power Upanishad can mingle with the muddy pond well. It's hard to force him out." The handsome man shook his head. "It's hard to deal with this man." "Yeah, the warriors that come to the ancient continent this time are all top warriors of the big star areas." "Deji, how about those 100 Kalpa soul threads?" The brawny man grinned. There were still many crystal-clear 100 Kalpa soul threads covering the muddy pond, even after the mud statue had taken half. Perhaps it was why the handsome man didn't murder Yu. The remaining amount of the 100 Kalpa soul thread was glowing faintly. Yu was standing there with an icy countenance. Yu had a cold face as she was too indignant. She hated that she couldn't kill all the people here. She had found the 100 Kalpa ghost hand Rattan first. But Yin and Sha Zhao had bothered her too much. Yin took a part of the 100 Kalpa soul thread, and the mud statue took half of the remaining. There weren't many threads lying there, and the 2 mysterious brothers were gazing at them. Yu was so angry that she wanted to spit blood. The good-looking man rubbed his chin. He pondered for a while and then guffawed. "We will take half of them." The man holding the massive hammer was surprised. Yu was also astounded. "We will take half. Everyone who sees it should receive a share of it." "Leave some for her," said the man with a smile. The muscular man was surprised, but he didn't argue. He seemed annoyed, but he walked over to take half of the remaining 100 Kalpa soul thread. Then, he turned to the other man. "Deji? Let's go." The handsome man's eyes drilled at Yu. He said, "Wu Feng, please send my regards to your father. Tell him I miss him." Then, he and the muscular man left. Wu Feng, Wu Feng. Yu was dumbstruck. She furrowed her bold brows and thought for a while. She discolored as if she recalled something. She looked fearful indeed. "Deji, who is she? We could have killed her and taken all the 100 Kalpa soul thread. It's not your style." After they left, Wu Bai, the younger brother, shouted at his brother. "If we killed her, we would receive a lot of trouble later. We'd better stay away from trouble." The handsome man called Wu Feng felt funny. "Who is she?" "Yu. Never heard before." "Kid, You've been grounded to cultivate year-round, so you don't know many things. Her father cultivates fate power Upanishad. He can touch the spiderweb of fate, which is really magical. Her mother also has a strong background. When I was out to experience, her father used to help me once. I owe him. Deji, was it the time you got stuck in original God realm and couldn't break into ethereal God realm? He guided you that time? Yeah, that time. Oh, you owe them a favor then. No wonder why you didn't kill her. Dash. After Shangying, you had stashed away the leftover 100 Kalpa soul thread. Her cold face got less tense. She took a deep breath and pondered for a while. She took out a rhombus mirror, which was made of the same material as the rhombus crystals she used to collect the 100 Kalpa soul thread. This mirror seemed to be able to contact the other crystals. A flow of icy breath was spread on the mirror. A white metal halo expanded and projected something blurry. She pulled the mirror close to her face to see. Her beautiful eyes brightened as she sneered. Well, you're having bad luck that you're undergoing the ethereal Kalpa at this moment. Just like a cold light, she quietly flew out of this place and headed in Shi Yan's direction. The murderous aura diffused from her soft body. 1 hour later, Shangyu wore a long water blue dress. Her cold face gazed at a murky puddle under her feet. She made an ice cube to be her foothold, so she didn't need to step on the dirty water. Her picturesque brows twitched. A white ring on her wrist shook for a while. Then, many ice sheets were generated as thin as a blade. They were gloomy and cold with flashes of lightning. All of a sudden, they plunged down to the muddy pond. Swoosh! A barrier exploded. An ice blade was smashed, and it caused an explosion. There was a barrier. Shang Yu's eyes sparkled. More feather-thin icy blades appeared. They all thrust into the ground with a chilling aura. Swoosh! 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 Countless thunderbolts exploded. Under her energy, they all got underground and stirred up the entire area. Deep underground, Shi Yan was covered inside a big chunk of dried mud. He shivered all of a sudden. The co-soul flew out of his soul altar and floated up over the muddy puddle. Swish! 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 The co-soul looked like a peculiar spirit flame. It was a multicolor fireball with magnificent life energy fluctuation. Abruptly, scorching flames flew out and moved in the sky, making a seething sea of fire. The fire of the origin burned all the wetland and mud around, causing them to crack. The thick earth and heaven energy of the ancient continent had become the body of that flame. It all congregated in a significant amount. Within seconds, the water-like dense earth and heaven energy gathered and created a misty body that covered the flaming soul. Boom, boom, boom. The block of energy as big as half a leaf fan with incredibly dense energy flowed towards Shangyu. Lightning and the blocks of energy impacted and exploded. The ground was bombarded by shockwaves of the impacts. Shangyu was frightened. The flaming soul that had flown out of Shi Yan's body could use the energy of this ancient continent at ease. With this power, it could create different violent attacks that had made Shangyu struggle a lot. Shangyu suddenly felt wrong. This man was the owner of the ancient continent. If he wasn't the master of the ancient continent, he wouldn't be able to mobilize the energy of the ancient continent and attack anyone as he pleased like this, right? Her fear made Shi Yan excited and thrilled. His co-soul was the fused form of the origin and the heaven flames. It was the core of Grace Mainland, and Grace Mainland was one of the ancient continents, which came from the same origin as this ancient continent called Desolate. It was the reason why when his co-soul got out of his body, it had also got rid of the invisible shackles and was able to control the immense energy of this area. The co-soul could use the energy in his area to create mighty attacks and lock Shangyu's commotion. Without the restraint of the body, Shi Yan let his co-soul fly out. It felt like a blind man had just got his sight back. When the host soul and the co-soul were still in his body, he couldn't sense the life energy around. It was like an invisible barrier that restricted him from using his soul consciousness to detect the other's commotions. It was a tough headache that everyone entered the ancient continent had to face. However, when his co-soul detached from his body, it seemed to break those shackles. It seemed like the co-soul was part of this ancient continent. Through the co-soul, he could simply sense the commotion of the surrounding 10,000 miles. The 10,000 miles around still consisted of immense swamps with many incredible existences. It wasn't like what he had observed before. Those life energy fluctuations were hiding in many corners or gathering in hordes. Yin sensed for a while and had a conclusion. A part of warriors who had entered this ancient continent had joined hands. This finding astounded him, as they were all outstanding ethereal god realm warriors of the great star areas. Facing even one was already a headache. If they joined hands, it would be a huge struggle for him. Boom! An earth and heaven energy punch, which was 1,000 meters big, forcefully struck Yu and smashed her lightning power. The energy of the co-soul was reduced. Yin immediately knew that the co-soul couldn't control the earth and heaven energy endlessly. It required soul consciousness and essence chi of the soul. Yin knew that he couldn't use the relationship between the co-soul and the ancient continent to be invincible. Don't be noisy anymore. Are you done yet? The co-soul released the furious soul energy and focused on Yu. I am noisy? It's you who is causing me trouble. Yu said with a cold countenance. You took the guiding fruit that belongs to us. You peeped on me when I was in the pond. You robbed my 100 Kalpa soul thread. Who is making noise here? Your father shoved the guiding fruit at me. I heard you screaming, so I came to check your situation. I was worried that something bad would happen to you. Don't you see that? Why did I take your 100 Kalpa soul thread? If you didn't let Xiaozhao know about my whereabouts, should I have risked my life against him? You were right in everything that happened? What kind of logic is that? Yin took a deep breath and then said, This is the last time I will remind you. The experts around here are joining hands. Only death awaits you and me. Moreover, a team is heading to us. Our fighting will be a prominent landmark to guide them. If you don't want to die, please stay quiet. Someone is coming? Yu smiled faintly and mocked. Don't tell me you can sense the surroundings. As far as I know, no one could sense the auras of the experts on this planet. Can you do that? What kind of realm do you have? Believe it or not, it's up to you. Yin sent her the message impatiently. Around 500 miles away, someone is coming. If we don't fight, they can't locate us. You can go there to check. I need to cultivate more, so I'll stay here. Then, his co-soul slowly lowered and disappeared into the muddy puddle. Yu hesitated for a while. She snorted and left to check his information. Chapter 11:01 Hand in Hand. Chapter 11:01 Hand in Hand _ Yu didn't believe Yin. Her father Shangqin, the one who cultivated fate power Upanishad, had traveled through many big star areas. He knew many secrets that other people would never know. From her father, she knew the peculiar condition of the ancient continent, which didn't allow the soul consciousness to sense. In this place, they could only use eyes to observe. She didn't doubt what her father had told her. After she had arrived, she had confirmed the magical features of this area. She figured out that her soul consciousness and the soul energy would be restricted. However, she still went there to check. Yin's performance was extraordinary. He could use earth and heaven energy of the ancient continent, which gave Yu a feeling that he had fused with this ancient continent. Yu was hesitant, indeed. As Yin had pointed the direction, Yu quietly moved towards it, using her secret treasure to hide her figure, aura, and even her life energy fluctuation. She moved invisibly towards that area. A group of 5 warriors was moving fast but relaxedly through the swamp. The 5 of them were at third sky of ethereal god realm, and the group included 4 old men and 1 woman. The 4 old men wore the same uniform, which was a dark blue fighting costume with a badge that had thick bones weaved on their left shoulders. Apparently, the 4 of them belonged to one force. The woman looked around 27 or 28 years old. She had beautiful, smiling eyes, and she was wearing a thin, cedar yellow dress to cover her graceful body. It seemed like she didn't come from the same force as the other 4. A bony old man was the leader of the other 4. His cheekbones rose high on his face and showed his malicious, ruthless contours. His snake eyes raked around the area as if he was searching for something. He suddenly rose his hand to make a gesture. The three men wearing the same uniform as him halted and observed gingerly. The graceful woman chuckled, but she also stopped. She cried, "Old Bai, the fight that we've detected stopped. Is it necessary to go there and check?" Bai Hao looked to the area further ahead of them. He contemplated, his face dark. "We will go there to see. With our powers, we don't need to be afraid of anything." Pausing for a while, he said, "Mia, the seven-colored demonic flower we just got is really precious. It's good for me." Mia, the only woman in this group, grinned and spoke indifferently, "It's good for me too." Bai Hao arched his brows and nodded. "Then never mind. Just keep it carefully." "I don't want to bother you with my issues," Mia smiled softly. The five of them were talking while walking towards the bog where Shi Yin was hiding deep underground. Along the way, they were very cautious and watching everything abnormal around. They didn't know there was someone watching them silently. Of course, that was Shang Yingyu. Shang Yingyu had used the secret treasure to hide her body and any vital signals. Her eyes gazed on Bai Hao. Her murderous aura arose as if she had a deep grudge against him. Shang Yingyu looked at that group of five for a while and then ran as if she was flying. Dash! A burning soul emerged from the bog and sent Shang Yingyu a soul message. "Did you see them?" An electric beam flashed by a dry tree. Shang Yingyu appeared. She gritted her teeth, her face icy cold. "I saw them. They are from the Bai family of dry bone star area, and there was one woman I didn't know." Her eyelashes twitched. "So you can really detect people in this ancient continent. Didn't you just confirm that?" Shi Yan's soul message was indifferent. "If we continue to fight, they will come here and follow the energy fluctuations. The five of them can kill the two of us. If you return the 100 Kalpa soul thread to me, I'll leave quickly," said Shang Yingyu persistently. "Impossible." Shi Yin was enraged. "If you want to court death, I'm not afraid to continue fighting you. You're hiding underground and using the 100 Kalpa soul thread to refine your ethereal extent. As long as I reveal your location, the Bai family will come to kill you." Shang Yingyu beamed a faint smile. "Then we have nothing to discuss more," said Shi Yin impatiently. "No, we can negotiate if you agree with me on one thing. Our previous resentment will be erased," said Shang Yingyu all of a sudden. "What is that?" "Help me deal with those five. Use your supernatural sensibility to locate them. Help me kill them," said Shang Yingyu resentfully. "Do you hold any grudge against them?" "We have a grudge with the Bai family. The Bai family in Dry Bone Star area is the archenemy of my mother's family. They killed my grandfather and grandmother." Shang Yingyu's face was cold. "Fantasy Mist Star area is adjacent to Dry Bone Star area. We have battles year-round. The Bai family is the overlord of Dry Bone Star area. They have some dark business with the God clan. They've been plotting against us for hundreds of years. My grandfather was killed in one of the Bai family's operations. We can't stand under the same sky as the Bai family. Why has your father not destroyed that family yet? The Bai family is domineering. It's famous for its intimidating presence in many star areas. It's not easy to deal with them anyway. They're approaching. You should hide first. We will discuss this later." Then, Shi Yin dropped their conversation. His co-soul sank into the ground and entered his soul altar. Shang Yingyu pondered for seconds. Her shadow faded and then disappeared into the void. After a while, Bai Hao's team emerged. Bai Hao frowned and assessed the area. He carefully checked the streaks and traces around the bog. He confirmed, the competences of both sides aren't normal. The three ethereal god realm experts of the Bai family came like a breeze. They stopped by Bai Hao and shook their heads, indicating that they didn't find anything special or anybody engaging in a fight. "Oh, this trip was in vain," said Mia with disappointment. "If I had known it earlier, I would have stayed and searched more in that exotic land. Perhaps we could have found another seven-colored demonic flower. Ah, I shouldn't have gone here with you." There are no meaningless fights in the ancient continent. Bai Hao observed the murky puddle inside the bog and said coldly, "Once a battle takes place, it means one thing. Two people found a precious material at the same time." Taking a deep breath, Bai Hao said, "Perhaps there's something precious not far from us. Also, the other two have found us and left earlier. Maybe they have left the precious treasure they had fought for behind." The other three warriors of the Bai family had their eyes brighten. Mia teased them. "The soul consciousness is restricted in this ancient continent. How could they detect us? Moreover, they were fighting. How could they have extra energy to observe around? I don't buy it. If you want to investigate, you do it. I don't want to waste my time with you guys." Then, Mia left early and didn't bother to bat her eyes at Bai Hao's team. After Mia had gone, one warrior of the Bai family asked in a cold and harsh voice, "Deji, who is that woman? Why do you have to treat her with care like that? Is it true that our Bai family has to be afraid of her? I think we should kill her to take the 7-colored demonic flower." Bai Hao sighed begrudgingly. "Don't act rashly. We can't offend this woman at the moment. If it was that easy, I would have killed her already. Who is she after all? Why do we have to give her a guiding fruit while bringing and protecting her here? Who could scare our Bai family?" said the man angrily. "Don't ask too much. What you should know, I will tell you. I won't tell you what you shouldn't know." Bai Hao frowned and scolded. "If you have extra energy, search around carefully to see if you can find any precious herbs or grass. We should take the chance when that woman isn't here to get it done. If we find anything, we can keep it." Sage *T. "We found the 7-colored demonic flower first and she claimed it. She pissed me off." "Control yourself. Before we've come to the ancient continent, I got the order to try our best to protect that woman. You guys have to watch over her." "Deji, who gave you that order?" "The family's head." The three ethereal god realm experts of the Bai family shut their mouths. They stooped and felt dispirited as they had to accept their mission begrudgingly. The four of them walked around and found no shadow or any good materials. Eventually, they had to leave reluctantly. Swoosh! A swift current shot out of the bog. Shiyin slowly emerged from that rapid current. Taking a deep breath, Shiyin felt refreshed. Divine light moved in his eyes. He flickered his mind, and the 3 powers in his tier of power, Upanishad, flashed one after another. Within one breath, he had shifted his energy between 3 powers. When he used the 100 Kalpa soul thread to train his ethereal extent, many disasters happened to his ethereal extent with different natural powers. However, his 3 powers Upanishads had dissolved them all. Afterward, he knew more abilities of the 3 powers Upanishads, especially the star power Upanishad. He vaguely felt that he had touched the door of the next breakthrough. He must have a significant understanding of the star, death and life, and space power Upanishads to break to second sky of ethereal god realm. He had advanced his star and space powers Upanishad. Now he needed to focus on his death and life power Upanishad. People with more than 1 powers Upanishad would find it hard to break through once they reached ethereal god realm. However, after each breakthrough, their powers and realms would advance even further. If he could master his powers Upanishads, he could use them to support each other. When that happened, his true power was going to be much more tremendous and powerful than the warriors with only 1 power Upanishad. It was also the reason why it was hard to make further progress in cultivating different powers at the same time. They still tried to practice them. A warrior who had mastered more powers Upanishads was unquestionably stronger than ordinary warriors. Shang Ying's graceful figure suddenly appeared, her eyes still cold. She asked, "What's your plan?" "I'll help you." Shiyin smiled brightly, "But I have one condition." "What's the condition?" "I want the 7-colored demonic flower that the woman keeps." One of the reasons why he went to the ancient continent was to take this kind of strange flower, which could help rescue young Tian Emperor. Deal. Chapter 1102. The General Situation of the Sea of Stars. Chapter 1102. The General Situation of the Sea of Stars. The 7-colored demonic flower was the factor for young Tian Emperor's recovery. It was also his primary goal when Shiyin came to this ancient continent. This kind of demonic flower was able to wash the soul-rotting aphis in young Tian Emperor's head. When he heard that Mia kept the flower, he had made up his mind. Inside the wet swamp, Yin and Yu concealed their auras, trolling like two departed spirits towards Bai Hao and Mia. Yu sometimes explained it to him. Yin frowned, his face severe. From Yu, he knew more information about this universe. Different from Fiery Rain Star Area and Agate Star Area, Fantasy Mist Star Area was one of the strongest star areas in this vast universe. At the same time, this star area had the most prominent feature. Fantasy Mist Star Area wasn't a closed galaxy. Agate Star Area and Fiery Rain Star Area were high-level star areas with intimidating incipient God Realm experts with generally outstanding competences. However, due to some reasons, there were space barriers between those star areas. Most of the space passages that connected to the other star areas were blocked. The forces of the two star areas had proactively cut off the connection to the outer world. They produced the goods they needed to shut themselves. Since they didn't have many connections with the outer world, they didn't know much of the vast universe and the intimidation of the God Clan. Just like that, the other significant star areas didn't have a high evaluation of Fiery Rain Star Area and Agate Star Area. They thought that the others were a bunch of freaks who didn't understand how to develop the star area. But this Fantasy Mist area was different. This star area wasn't closed. It had a close connection to the other big star areas, as it had many routes and passages leading to different galaxies. There was no space barrier between this star area and the others. They did it on purpose. Fantasy Mist Star Area was the real door that opened to the immense sea of stars. Thus, Yu's understanding of outer space and the other powerful forces everywhere wasn't something that Yin could imagine or compare to. Through her introduction, Yin's knowledge of the top powerful forces in this universe gradually got clearer. The truth wasn't so much different from what he had known. Ancient God Star Area where the God Clan stayed was no doubt the strongest star area in this universe. The God Clan was also the strongest force. They were the immemorial beast that crouched in the universe and could bite any prey it considered suitable at a favorable moment. The 12 great families of the God Clan had ruled some smaller star areas. Each family had many experts like clouds in the sky. The God Clan was formed by the 12 great families, which was like a horde of bloodthirsty lions, always trying to showcase their invading instinct. The God Clan was so mighty, and Ancient God Star Area was acknowledged as the strongest star area in the universe. They ruled forces from everywhere. Although the God Clan and their Ancient God Star Area was dominant and ranked first, they hadn't really claimed the entire universe. There were still some smaller star areas and forces that the God Clan didn't dare to provoke or declare war with. There were some star areas, some forces, and some solid experts in this vast universe. Due to the existence of such forces and star areas, the God Clan couldn't invade most of the star areas in the vast sea of stars and turn them into its private territory to make many clans and forces its vassals. Hollow Fearsome Star Area, Fantasy Mist Star Area, and Dry Bone Star Area were some examples. These star areas had super powerful forces with peerless warriors. Although one force of them couldn't resist the entire God Clan, it was enough to withstand one or more families of the God Clan. Usually, if it was not a disaster that could destroy their clan, the 12 families of the God Clan didn't really unite. Thus, Hollow Fearsome Star Area, Fantasy Mist Star Area, and Dry Bone Star Area had a slot in this immense sea of stars. If the influential star areas like Hollow Fearsome Star Area, Fantasy Mist Star Area, and Dry Bone Star Area with some other star areas could stand still in the flood of God Clan's invasion, it meant that they were brutal and powerful enough. They didn't shut themselves out. Those star areas connected to each other, and they exchanged things. Sometimes, they would create chances for warriors to discuss their powers and competencies. They were like allies of the same star areas. However, this kind of ally wasn't officially defined. They wouldn't always get along well. Sometimes, they would have disputes, which could even accelerate to a war. However, once the God Clan dared to let its mental problem expand to these areas and affect their benefits, those allies would unite. The union of powerful star areas from everywhere in the vast universe could resist the entire God Clan. Thus, they could restrict the God Clan and make them invade star areas that aren't in the Union. Since Fiery Rain Star Area and Agate Star Area had defended themselves alone for so many years, they weren't members of this union. Also, as they didn't receive any help or protection, they were the delicious meat in the God Clan's eyes. Of course, the God Clan would spend their best efforts to swallow them. Gu God Sect of Hollow Fearsome Star Area, the Bai family of Dry Bone Star Area, the Wu family of Prosaic Star Area, and the Drifting Fire of Fantasy Mist Star Area were some of the famous, dominating forces in this vast universe besides the God Clan. Those forces were loose in the Union. They had secret disputes and competitions. Perhaps they had caused grudges. When the God Clan wasn't a threat to them, they would have a lot of battles. But if the God Clan invaded one of these star areas, they would unite to counter it. Of course, after several fierce wars with the God Clan for thousands of years, God Clan didn't show any intent to invade any of those allies anymore. Since they didn't have a common enemy, the allies in this loose union had been continuously fighting each other, which accelerated after many years and got more furious. The war between the Drifting Fire of Fantasy Mist Star Area and the Bai family of Dry Bone Star Area became so fierce that their core experts were killed. Shang Yingyu's grandfather was one of the leaders of the Drifting Fire. He was killed in the fight against the Bai family. This kind of grudge would never be untied. Lately, the Bai family seems to join hands with the God Clan. We received intelligence. The battleships of Ancient God Star Area and Dry Bone Star Area have done business. We believe they should have some agreement with the God Clan. Since we found something unusual in their operation, the Bai family has aimed at us. My grandfather's death is somehow related to a family of the God Clan. Shang Yingyu said through her gritted teeth. Doesn't your union consider the God Clan your enemy? Why does the Bai family have a connection with the God Clan? Shi Yin was surprised. The God Clan is too powerful. At the same time, they are good at enticing people. They've offered the temptation that the Bai family couldn't resist. Perhaps the Bai family couldn't stand their desires, so they shook hands with the God Clan. Shang Yingyu frowned and said, for example, the God Clan could invite the Bai family to attack a star area together. After they have taken that area down, the Bai family could share all the benefits with the God Clan. The Bai family couldn't resist such a deal. Once they go on the same road as the God Clan, slowly, they will become the God Clan's henchmen. They will never escape. God Clan has many tricks to recruit strong clans and forces. Take the Dark Shadow Clan, for example. That clan was really strong. However, they have become the watchdog of the God Clan. I still have many examples if you want to hear. Shi Yin grimaced. The more he understood the general picture of the universe, the more he knew about the God Clan's intimidation. The God Clan had spread their forces to the entire universe like long tentacles tying down each star area in this vast universe that slowly pulled them into its hands. If it kept going at this invasion speed, the forces that didn't belong to this union would become the vassals of the God Clan soon. Sooner or later, even that loose star area union would be divided. God Clan would swallow its members, one by one. This God Clan was like a bloodthirsty beast with endless desires. It wanted this entire universe. You say the Bai family and the God Clan have joined hands? Asked Shi Yin. Shang Yingyu nodded. My father has a precise presumption. He said that the Bai family and the God Clan has been plotting against a star area called Agate Star Area. It's my father's homeland. The Bai family and the God Clan already have a plan. They will deploy their armies together. They even have a plan to divide that star area. Shi Yin had a dark face. I'm from Agate Star Area. Shang Yingyu was surprised. She said faintly, what a coincidence. Shi Yin didn't say more. He silently let his co-soul flow up and observed the surroundings like the eye of heaven. Shi Yin knew the direction of Bai Hao and Mia. His co-soul could recognize their location and direction easily. The different talents were all ineffective in this ancient continent like open eyes of the blind. Although the soul consciousness couldn't sense around, since Shi Yan's co-soul had the same origin as this ancient continent, he wasn't bound to this strict restriction. He could still sense the surroundings precisely. They were waiting for a good chance to attack the others. As they weren't the opponents of that ground of 5, they had to follow them closely and quietly. However, they hadn't attacked yet. All of a sudden, Shi Yin furrowed his brows and halted. Shang Yingyu's graceful body also stopped. She swayed her delicate waist and turned around to look at him, her beautiful eyes confused. Bai Hao's group and Mia were heading to the big hole that Shi Yin had dug up with his power, where he saw a faint blue light that had sent a vibe to the star in his ethereal extent. It was possibly something precious. At this moment, Bai Hao and Mia seemed to have discovered something. They stood there silently. "Are you going to take action now?" Shang Yingyu exhaled quietly and asked, "If you're not sure, you shouldn't act rashly. If the 5 of them don't scatter, we won't be able to fight them." Shi Yin nodded. He suddenly sat down cross-legged on the wet, muddy ground. He squinted and didn't say a word. His co-soul flickered like a ghost flame, releasing the clear soul energy fluctuation. After a long time, Shi Yan's eyes flared with the frightening cold light. "I got it." "What?" Shang Yingyu was surprised. "Wait for the fun part." Shi Yin disappeared like a cold lightning and glided in another direction. Chapter 1103, Upset a Plan. Chapter 1103, Upset a Plan _ Shang Yingyu couldn't guess Shi Yan's thoughts or his plan in mind. She couldn't check the commotions around like Shi Yin, so she could only stay quietly here and wait for him. Shi Yin had left for 1 hour. She wasn't worried about anything unexpected happening or his situation. After she had confirmed that Shi Yin could still use his soul consciousness to sense around this ancient continent, people would find it hard to attack him unless he wanted to see trouble. Of course, Shi Yin wasn't that kind of impulsive person. She thought that Shi Yin had changed his mind. She didn't know how important the 7-colored demonic flower was to Shi Yin. Thus, she just assumed that Shi Yin had fled because he knew that he couldn't resist Bai Hao and Mia. He had just made an excuse to ditch her here. The more Shang Yingyu thought about this possibility, the more likely it appeared to her. Her face gradually turned colder and harsher. She gritted her teeth and cursed. The Bai family and her force were like water and fire. Through several hundred years, they had fought a lot. Her grandfather was killed in a raid led by the Bai family and the God clan. Earlier, her mother had told her to be aware of the Bai family. If she had a chance, she should try her best to attack them. She still remembered how her loving grandfather had treated her. After he returned home from the war every time, he would give her some gifts that would make her excited for a long time. When she was a little girl, her grandfather would hold her on his lap or his shoulder, play with her, and take her flying up to the blue sky with cotton clouds. She'd been mourning for him since the day she knew he was killed. At that time, she had cried for 10 days. Her tears were a chain of broken pearls. At that time, she was small and her realm wasn't profound. She was at King God realm only. She didn't have the capacity to take revenge for her grandfather. However, right at that moment, she had crossed her heart that she would use all of her strength to smash the Bai family. Years later, she knew how strong the Bai family was and the relationship between the Bai family and the God clan. They used to fight the Bai family with victories and losses. One time, the Bai family had ambushed her and her brother, Shang Qiu. Also in that battle, Shang Qiu's soul altar got damaged after he rescued her. Shang Yingyu was grinding her white teeth, her beautiful eyes flaring with a cold aura. She had made up her mind. Even if no one wanted to help her, she would hide and wait for the right chance to strike the Bai family hard. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The fluttering sounds of clothes moving in the wind came together with a brutal aura that approached her. Shang Yingyu's bold brows slightly furrowed. She hid silently in the dark and waited. Her eyes brightened as she retrieved a radiant light cage that was covering her body entirely. She appeared and exhaled. "What did you do?" "Helped you deal with the warriors of the Bai family." A strange flame flickered above Shi Yin's head as he was gliding like a ghost towards Shang Yingyu. His thoughts changed, and he retrieved the co-soul and his soul altar. He spoke to Shang Yingyu. "Help me conceal my body. I'm going to take you to see something fun." While talking, he didn't mind his manner in approaching Shang Yingyu. "I know you have a special secret treasure. I'm not sure I can hide 2 people." Seeing him come close, Shang Yingyu looked reluctant. She hurried to scream, "Stop!" A part of her creamy hand flashed a light of beautiful jade. An emerald green color burst out a faint icy blue halo. It looked like a massive bowl set upside down to cover her graceful, sexy body. The blue light quietly became transparent and then disappeared. Shang Yingyu's aura and body disappeared altogether. There's still room for you, but you aren't allowed to stand too close to me, Shang Yingyu said coldly from nowhere. Understood. Shi Yin nodded and got inside the cage, his face natural and calm. People couldn't see any difference from the outside. Inside the deep blue cage, touching the barrier of blue seawater felt like touching ice. The cage wasn't huge. When Shi Yin got inside, he had to stand shoulder by shoulder with Shang Yingyu. There was a narrow gap between them. He could inhale a faint orchid aroma from Shang Yingyu's body. Also, he could feel her soft but slightly cold shoulder. A blue electric arc flashed on Shang Yingyu's shoulder. A blue electric arrow made a straight line that separated Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu. Don't stick to me, hissed Shang Yingyu. Shrugging, Shi Yin mumbled. Who's interested in you? Hey! Shang Yingyu suddenly turned around, shooting him a glare. What do you want me to watch that's so fun? If you lie to me, I won't leave you alone. She took several deep breaths in her anger, which made her thrust out her mesmerizing, breathtaking breasts. We're just the audience. Squinting and looking at the area ahead of them, Shi Yan's eyes were like ice sabers. He muttered, I have no feeling for people who shake hands with the God Clan. If I get a chance to do evil deeds, well, I won't let it slip away. It's not just their team that will come to this ancient continent, anyway. You mean, you found another team? Shang Yingyu's graceful body shook. Her mouth's curved in fear. You want to provoke a battle with them? We don't need to provoke anyone, Shi Yin smiled evilly. People will fight for benefits in this ancient continent. Strong warriors can't avoid disputes here, especially when Bai Hao's team seems to have found something over there. You're despicable. Thanks for the compliment. That deep hole was dozens of mu large, which looked dark and bottomless. Many dirty, discomposed leaves were swirling inside that hole. It was caused by Shi Yan's attack when he was chasing after Sha Zhao. The deep pit was filled with filthy water and mud while grass and leaves were floating on the surface. There was nothing to appraise in this area. However, there were 5 warriors standing and watching by the edge of the hole. Bai Hao and the 3 warriors of the Bai family frowned. They didn't know why Mia wanted to come here or what she was doing. A delicate, hexagonal crystal glowing in clear red light was held in her green, onion-like fingers. She was fondling that crystal, her eyes bright. A long moment later, the glowing red lozenge crystal shot out a rainbow light from its 6 points. The 6 beams of light were straight like swords, but they all combined into one muddy point in that swampy hole. The energy of the rainbow light hit on that point. Something inside exploded. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Strange noises started to hiss from that area, which was unpleasant to the ears. The 4 people of Bai Hao's group were gloomy. They felt it was very grating, and it made their scalps numb, as if someone was using a sharp tool to drill into their soul altars. The 4 of them felt so uncomfortable. However, Mia looked excited as her bright eyes lit up. Something is there, indeed. A blue light suddenly shot out from the point that the rainbow light was illuminating and smashed the rainbow light. The hexagonal crystal in Mia's hand grumbled as if it was about to shatter. Mia was both happy and frightened. She hurried to put her unique, energy-sensing device into her fantasy sky ring. She was so delighted to gaze at that blue light. The hexagonal crystal could sense strange crystals and other precious treasures that had strong energy. The stronger the energy that object had, the fiercer her crystal would react. Recently, her crystal started slowly breaking. She understood that no matter what it was, the thing deep in that muddy ground would have absolutely powerful energy. Mia's eyes had a divine light that was as bright as a torch. She smiled happily. You guys, go and check it out. She turned her head and bent her body slightly to request Bai Hao's group to help her investigate that area. Bai Hao changed his complexion a little bit, but the other 3 were obviously enraged. Exploring the unknown objects would be accompanied with unforeseen dangers. If she didn't do it herself, she knew that it was dangerous. She had ordered Bai Hao's team like a master to make them bear the danger for her. So, didn't your family's head tell you anything? Mia was still smiling, but her eyes were getting colder. Baihao was shaken. He recalled what the family head told him. He sweated and hurriedly replied, "Don't worry. We know what to do." He nodded to the other three. The three of them had reluctant faces. They sighed inwardly before gathering their energy to investigate the area where the blue light shot out. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Ear-splitting noises came from another corner of the swamp. Wu Bai with the big hammer and the gold armor was running like an imposing mountain. Every time he stomped the ground, it sounded like they were creating earthquakes. Wu Feng was like a ghost that smiled gently and waved his fan slightly while following his younger brother. "We got good luck anyway. We just got the 100 Kalpa soul thread not long ago. Now, something good is coming up." "Haha, Deji, you say? What do we do this time?" Wu Bei shouted violently as if he wasn't afraid of anyone. "Of course, we have to identify what it is. Then, we will decide what to do," smiled Wu Feng. While they were talking, they passed Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu who were concealing their bodies. They dashed towards Baihao's group. Dash. Inside the light cage that the others couldn't detect, Shang Yingyu's delicate face had a gleam of surprise. "Why did you get them here?" "They were the nearest group, and they're the strongest," Shi Yin explained naturally. "Those two brothers have the competence to fight against the 4 warriors of the Bai family. Although they are all at 3rd sky of ethereal god realm, those 2 brothers are much stronger. Of course, the Wu brothers of prosaic star area aren't the vagabonds." Shang Yingyu's eyes were strange. "The Wu family? Is this Wu family strong too? How is it compared to the Bai family?" "1 level stronger." Shi Yin was surprised. "Are we just staying here, or what?" Shang Yingyu lifted her head. Her energy surged in her body as if she wanted to join the battle. "I have no objection if you want to come close to watch the battle. Anyway, the precondition is making sure they don't detect you." "Are you sure they won't?" Shi Yin looked placid. He spoke faintly. "We can join the battle too, but we have to wait until they determine the winner first." "Can you do that?" "Of course, I can." "All right, we're going there. I'm also curious as to what they have found." Chapter 1104, The Brilliant Star Fruit Tree. Chapter 1104, The Brilliant Star Fruit Tree Unearther. Baihao pointed with his index finger. A green light shot out from his fingertip like a flexible rope that fell into the bottomless pit. Swoosh! His light beams suddenly shattered and turned into dots of lights that fell into the center of the pit like pieces of broken glass. An energy fluctuation suddenly shot out of that bottomless pit. Something was emerging from the ground, as if an invisible force was pushing something through the layers of soil and mud. The 3 warriors of the Bai family squinted. A strange light flared in their eyes. They mobilized their energy discreetly. Mia's picturesque eyebrows twitched. She pulled herself together and smiled. Her 10 slender fingers fidgeted the hexagonal crystal and made it emit radiant divine light. A green stone slowly emerged from the filthy swamp. That stone wasn't significant. It had the shape of a tree with many greenish halos covering the entire stone. The energy that the stone sent out was really sharp. The tree-shaped stone had many cracks where there was even thicker green light. Drilling their line of sight through the cracks, they could see something inside the stone. Under that tree-shaped stone, the beam of energy that Baihao had controlled slowly brought the stone out of the murky pit. Baihao frowned and studied that matter for a while. He asked in astonishment, "What is this?" He looked at Mia. The other warriors of the Bai family looked perplexed. They didn't know what that tree-shaped stone was. Mia didn't reply, her eyes focusing on the stone and her shoulders shivering. Boom! She suddenly squeezed off a hexagonal crystal in her hand. A beautiful light dot flew out and barged on that tree-shaped stone. Boom! Waves of dazzling light shot out like the magnificent light of a broken star. The white and green lights became blinding like lightning. However, shortly after, the white light was subdued and it left only some greenish light. In the center of the explosion, the tree-shaped stone had disappeared and left nothing. A clean stream floated above the dirty swamp like a cotton cloud. The cool and pure aura emitted from the stream calmed people's souls. The green stream looked like a green mirror floating above the boggy ground. It seemed to be a strange tree for this scenery. Bai Hao's eyes brightened. He couldn't help but scream, "There's something inside." Inside that clear stream was a tree with many roots and moist, fresh, lush branches and leaves. That tree seemed to be made of flawless, exquisite green jade. It was so perfect. The trunk of that tree was as big as an arm, and it was as tall as an adult. People could see some chestnut-sized fruits hanging on different branches. Those fruits had many fine patterns on the surface as they were blinking brilliantly like real stars. A strange tree grew inside a clear stream with some magnificent fruits. All of these details made Bai Hao's team astounded. There were 9 fruits on that tree. All of them marvelously twinkled like a star with a strong but strange energy. Mia gazed at the clear stream and the fruit tree inside. Her face was blushing charmingly. Her big breasts bounced slightly when she gasped. Evidently, she was so thrilled. Including Bai Hao, the 4 experts of the Bai family discreetly swallowed their saliva looking at the woman. They were so mesmerized by her sexy glamour. However, they were actually screaming inwardly to wake up their mind. "What is it?" Bai Hao took a deep breath and pretended to be calm. He wasn't foolish. From Mia's complexion, he knew that the fruit tree in that stream was really precious. Although he was ordered to protect Mia, he also had the mission to collect bizarre but valuable items for the Bai family. He wouldn't ignore anything that appeared to be good. The brilliant starfruit tree. Mia's full lips curled, her beautiful eyes bright and her voice soft. "Help me take it out." Bai Hao's group looked at each other. They appeared as if they had never heard of the brilliant starfruit tree, so they didn't take action immediately. "Forgive my ignorance. I've never heard of the brilliant starfruit tree. I don't know how to take it. Please advise." Frowned Bai Hao. Mia smiled warmly. She pointed at the green halo twirling around the stream. "First, let's break those halos. Can you use your power Upanishad?" The 4 warriors of the Bai family nodded. They winked and signaled each other to approach the halos. They were cautious and didn't hurry to use their power Upanishad just yet. Boom! When the 4 warriors of the Bai family were about to take action, a massive hammer like a dazzling gold sun came from a far distance with the power of a thunderstorm. Bai Hao discolored. He said resolutely, "Kill them first." The other 3 warriors of the Bai family had malicious eyes. They put aside the fruit tree and detached. They looked at the massive hammer that was like a scorching sun. The giant hammer radiated billions of gold beams, which were as sharp as a sword. The surging energy gushing out from that hammer was really frightening. Bai Hao snorted and touched his forehead. A giant furry white ape stormed out from his glabella. That giant ape wasn't a real entity as it was condensed by energy. This white ape was dozens of meters tall. As soon as it appeared, it made people around look so small. The giant white ape faced the sky and roared, releasing its murderous aura and energy. The massive, mountain-like hands balled into fists as it shouted and punched that gold hammer. When it touched the hammer, its body emitted gold light as if it was walloped by the hammer. Wu Bai's hammer looked like a windmill, which was tiny compared to that white ape. However, countless gold beams from that hammer acted like billions of sharp knives that cut the white ape into smaller pieces. It exploded instantly. Bai Hao paled and snorted. The smaller pieces of the white ape gathered one more time. After 3 breaths, the giant ape reappeared, screaming and roaring crazily above Bai Hao's head. The 3 other warriors of the Bai family also urged their powers. Phantoms of beasts emerged above their heads. There was a demonic dragon, a lightning eagle, and a giant python that looked like a mountain range. The Bai family's members had a peculiar power Upanishad. The giant white ape, demonic dragon, fighting eagle, and the massive python was created by their energy and power Upanishad. They weren't beasts, but they had the power of Bai Hao's team. Their bodies contained turbulent energy that wasn't less than the Bai Hao's team itself. The Bai family. A cold voice arose. They saw Wu Feng drifting towards them like a ghost with his feather fan in his hand. Boom! A muscular body landed from the sky, stomping on the ground and creating some tremors. The man rose his hand, and the gold hammer fell into his hand. Did ye? Wubai looked so excited. He thundered, "Finally, we will have an exciting battle." Mia frowned. Bai Hao's team quieted down, their faces getting stern. When the two sides were observing each other, commotions happened in another corner. Inside the light cage, Shang Yingyu's beautiful face was so cold as she glared at Shi Yin maliciously. Shang Yingyu acted as if she didn't see that. Another energy shockwave swarmed over. The light cage twisted like a leather bag in the strong wind. The force pressed on the light cage, pushing Shi Yin towards Shang Yingyu. Their limbs touched. Sometimes, when the shockwave was too strong, Shi Yin would tremble, which allowed his legs and lower body to touch Shang Yingyu's curvy, ample butt cheeks. Shang Yingyu screamed like a stray cat. This light cage wasn't wide. When the energy of the battle swept over this area, it twisted, which gave the two standing inside some physical contact. Wu Bai's and Bai Hao's energy impacted, sending away shockwaves far, far away. After a while, Shi Yin had touched Shang Yingyu's white arms, slender, straight thighs, and breathtakingly round but several times. Although Shang Yingyu knew that Shi Yin couldn't control this, she was still enraged. Her beautiful eyes flared up with cold light as she hated herself for letting Shi Yin enter this light cage. In her cold eyes, Shi Yin was still calm and natural as if nothing had happened. He focused on watching the Bai family's warriors and the Wu brothers. He still had free time to take out the book that Shangchun had given him. He started studiously reading as if he was searching something. Shang Yingyu felt her teeth get itchy. "Found it!" Shi Yin suddenly screamed, his face astounded as he read a page with the drawing and description of something called Brilliant Starfruit Tree. Lifting his head, he took a deep breath, his eyes hot. "You know the Brilliant Starfruit Tree, don't you? The book you have is from my father. Of course, I know what the Brilliant Starfruit Tree is. It's an original incipient grade material. It has an unimaginable effect on the warriors who cultivate star power Upanishad." Shang Yingyu snorted, answering coldly, "I cultivate star power Upanishad." Shi Yin pulled himself together and beamed a faint smile. Shang Yingyu didn't change her complexion. "I knew it." "Good then." He turned around and grinned. "I want the Brilliant Starfruit Tree. Yeah. Just consider it one of the conditions I want to help you deal with the Bai family." In Shang Yingyu's eyes, she had a sneer that she didn't want to hide. "I have no objection. But do you think you can snatch that tree from the Bai family and the Wu brothers? You dumb. You don't need to care about this. You just need to agree on my conditions." He looked at the two parties, his face stern and brave. She could see the determination in his eyes that showed that he wouldn't give up until he got it. "That Brilliant Starfruit Tree must belong to me. Whether it is the Bai family or the Wu family, they shouldn't dream about taking my possessions." Shang Yingyu smiled disdainfully. "Well, low realm but high voice, eh?" Chapter 1105. Awkward Exposition. Chapter 1105. Awkward Exposition _ Shi Yin felt his enthusiasm surging. He had only Shang Qin's introduction of the Brilliant Starfruit Tree in his head. He didn't listen to what Shang Yingyu was telling him. It was hard to tell what the Brilliant Starfruit Tree was. Shang Chun wasn't so sure if it was a plant or a kind of inheritance. It was really tough to create the Brilliant Starfruit Tree. It required an expert who cultivated star power Upanishad to incipient God realm. This expert's soul altar had to have shattered when he died. His incipient extent could fuse with a life star while pieces of his shattered soul altar filled the corners of that life star, which made it turn into a meteor. The meteor would then drift in the vast sea of stars and continue gathering the energy of the stars. After countless years, it would become the Brilliant Starfruit Tree. Thus, the Brilliant Starfruit Tree could be deemed a shattered soul altar of an incipient God realm expert who cultivated star power Upanishad. It was the energy crystallization of the stars in the form of a tree. The fruit of the Brilliant Starfruit Tree was called the Brilliant Starfruit. The energy accumulated inside a Brilliant Starfruit was as much as what a level 3 life star could have. At the same time, the tree had the essence of star power Upanishad in its branches and roots. It was the consolidation of the energy and star power Upanishad, the soul altar of an incipient god realm who had gone to nirvana. After different training times, it could collect star energy. Slowly, it became that tree with the knowledge of the incipient god realm expert. Thus, it could be considered a star power Upanishad's inheritance too. If ordinary people had the brilliant star fruit, they could understand the star power Upanishad in one step. At the same time, they could receive pure energy in that fruit. It was similar to picking up the inheritance of star power Upanishad, which could help the warrior reach the realm of the deceased incipient god realm without a significant bottleneck. Also, even if the warrior didn't cultivate that power Upanishad, once he had the brilliant star fruit, one day, he could enter the incipient god realm if he didn't get killed. A brilliant star fruit tree could create an incipient god realm expert cultivating star power Upanishad. If a warrior got the brilliant star fruit tree, he could absorb the energy in the fruits to fill their essence chi ancient tree, which would help him have more god power to break through. If the warrior who cultivated star power Upanishad got the brilliant star fruit tree, not only would the warrior take in the energy, but he could also learn the essence of star power Upanishad, which would advance his realm to a level that people had to admire. If he could get that brilliant star fruit tree, Yin didn't need to struggle with his star power Upanishad anymore. He could absorb the knowledge of star power rapidly to transform his star power Upanishad. It was truly an original incipient grade material that seemed to be customized for him. How could he let it slip away? No wonder why his ethereal extent had had some strange vibes when he saw the blue light in that area. His star power Upanishad resonated with that tree. Yan's eyes were as sharp as swords that gazed that brilliant star fruit tree through the invisible light cage. He had to get it. The Wu brothers? Bai Hao frowned tightly. The three warriors of the Bai family scattered and surrounded the brilliant star fruit tree. As soon as Wu Feng and Wu Bai had any strange commotion, they would attack immediately. The demonic dragon, the fighting eagle, and the python were like three unreal mountains floating above their heads. As the three beasts were made of the energy, souls, and spirits of the three warriors, they were especially intimidating. Bai Hao's giant white ape pounded its chest and roared. Its murderous energy shot up into the sky, which looked so real. Hey, Bai people, we are also interested in that brilliant star fruit tree. What do you say? Wu Feng walked forward and smiled while waving his feather fan, his eyes dark and malicious. If you let us take it, we won't trouble you. I know that you know how to behave. Although Wu Feng and Wu Bai had come here alone, they were so arrogant and tyrannical when they asked the others to give up the treasure. Bai Hao's team grimaced. Inside the immense sea of stars, the Wu family of prosaic star area was indeed famous. Their general competence was actually stronger than that of the Bai family. Everybody knew how intimidating the Wu brothers were. Although Bai Hao wasn't young and had the same realm, he knew that there wasn't any benefit from fighting those two. However, they had 4 people here plus Mia. The Wu brothers? Bai Hao sneered coldly. I know you guys are strong. I also know your family's intimidation. But in this ancient continent, haha. He looked at Mia. Mia frowned, her face impatient. Don't waste my time. Bai Hao was shocked. He shouted abruptly. Kill. The giant white ape roared crazily like thunderclaps. It bared its fangs and jumped over, falling like a pressing mountain on the Wu brothers. At the same time, the demonic dragon, fighting eagle, and the python, the 3 beasts generated by energy, also flew out. While they were moving in the sky, they had even discolored the sky. The energy surging from them was so earth-shaking. When the giant white ape landed, it created 2 deep holes on the ground. They couldn't see the bottoms. The demonic dragon rolled in the swamp, creating more ditches and sending mud into the air. Their energy magnetic fields burst off like an erupting volcano, stirring the entire area. Wu Bai lifted his hammer. Dazzling gold light bloomed on his armor. He looked like a gold angel. He looked at the Bai family's warriors without fear. Wu Feng had cold eyes. He had a mocking smile on his handsome face. The fan in his hand opened and closed from time to time. The rivers gushed out powerfully like ropes tying down the 4 massive beasts. From that moment, the Bai family's warriors and the Wu brothers started to fight furiously. They stirred up the entire place. Dust rose. The ground cracked. If it wasn't an ancient continent, it wouldn't have been able to stand the furious battle of the four-peak of ethereal god realm experts. Mia was like a fresh flower standing aside. She had a faint smile on her face, and she didn't look like she would join this battle. It seemed like the Bai family's warriors were all her servants in her point of view. Thus, they had to shoulder her troubles. This kind of battle task was the Bai family's responsibility. Mia didn't hurry to take the brilliant starfruit tree. Her line of sight switched between the Bai family's warriors and the Wu brothers. No one knew what she was thinking. As the light cage leaned from side to side, Shang Yingyu's graceful body shivered. She gritted her teeth. Her face grimaced. The battle between the Wu brothers and the four warriors of the Bai family had risen earth-shaking energy shockwaves like tornadoes that expanded. They made many trees around burst off and the ground crack. If they weren't far from the battle and the light cage didn't have a potent defense, Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin would have to have used their energy to resist. Inside the light cage, Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu were pushed together as if someone was teasing them. They trembled as if they were drunk. Sometimes their chests touched while other times their waists and butts collided. It felt like they were sitting on a bobbing boat that couldn't be stabilized. Shi Yin still looked calm, but he was actually amused. After a while, his limbs had touched her ample breasts and her round but more than 10 times. After each time, he felt so amazed as if he received a light touch of electricity. The grudge that Shang Yingyu had vented out like that. The blue dress clung to her body. The soft and beautiful material of the dress showcased her generous contours. Her straight thighs were so mesmerizing in a pair of silver boots. Shang Yingyu had snow-white skin and creamy exposing arms. She also had a slim waist and sexy legs. Shang Yingyu's body indeed had a golden ratio that people couldn't find any flaw to complain. At this moment, her ice-like face was embarrassed and enraged. She hissed, "Die, king asshole." She stooped, looking at the space between Shi Yan's legs. At first glance, she knew that Shi Yan was pretending to be calm. The flame of anger in her heart burst out. Something that looked like a one-horned dragon emerged in between his legs, bulging his pants like a small tent. It wanted to show its rough and brutal characteristics. It's a normal reaction. Don't be startled. You're a woman. I'm a man. We're this close. It's unavoidable. Shi Yan staggered and didn't look at her. Another fierce shockwave swarmed over them. Shang Yingyu reluctantly trembled and leaned on Shi Yan. The light cage sent them a furious shockwave like a powerful hand shoving her into Shi Yan's lap. A rigid, hot shaft placed on her round butt. At that moment, Shang Yingyu felt like she received an electric shock. Shame and anger flooded her. Get lost. A flow of lightning energy shot out of Shang Yingyu's shoulder and entered Shi Yan's body, who was unguarded. Boom! Shi Yan emerged and staggered out of the light cage. However, his lower body was still sticking like an iron pole, as if it could tear his pants to get out at any minute. Her beautiful eyes had a strange light as Mia was planning something. She suddenly saw a young man with a grimace on his face and the short lance under his pants. He was standing on a rock on the left of the swamp. His lust posture was so obvious. Mia was bewildered. She didn't know what was going on, but she just kept staring at that young man. Under her awkward look, the young man turned around and punched the light curtain behind him. A beautiful woman appeared with an embarrassed face and a red neck. Mia was stunned for seconds. She felt so awkward when she said, "Well, you two have some special interest, I guess. You like to have fun when others are fighting fiercely. Did you move so fast that you broke your concealing equipment?" She felt so funny as she teased the other two. She thought that it was interesting indeed. Shang Yingyu hated that she couldn't dig into the ground and go underground immediately. Looking at Mia with an odd face, she was so angry that she almost fainted. She had never been in such a helter-skelter situation. Shi Yan looked indifferent. He smiled and shrugged at Mia. "Well, you guys, keep fighting. We won't disturb you. We're leaving now. Bye." "Oh, please don't." Mia thinned her lips, her eyes sparkling. "You guys can continue your fun. Just consider it like no one's here." Ah, if you don't mind, I do want to watch. I heard that some people like others watching them when they do that. Since you have such a special passion, I'm interested. Shang Yingyu felt blood rise to her brain. She shivered and trembled as if she couldn't steady her body anymore. Chapter 1106. Change Again and Again. Chapter 1106. Change Again and Again underscore. The furious fight between Bai Hao's team and the Wu brothers halted all of a sudden. The ethereal god realm experts of different star areas gazed at Shang Yingyu and Shi Yin. As people were gazing at her, Shang Yingyu's face became colder. She glared maliciously at Shi Yin. It's your fault. Shi Yin snorted and said to her, our agreement is on hold temporarily. A deep flame shot out from his palm, making a gentle curve in the void. It strangely turned into a flaming arm that snatched the brilliant star fruit tree. Everybody paused and wore a disdainful smile on their faces as they watched him. A starlight rippled like waves of water in the lake with fierce energy fluctuation. The flaming arm that Shi Yin had condensed was smashed. It turned into many sparks when it touched the first layer of starlight. Shi Yin frowned slightly. If it were easy to take that brilliant star fruit tree, you think I would just stand here and watch? Mia mocked. Her bright eyes shifted to the other 4 people of Bai Hao's group with a glance. Deal with those troublemakers first? Bai Hao nodded. His team left the Wu brothers. Their cold eyes gazed at Shi Yin and Shang Yingyu. Bai Hao was surprised. She stared at Shang Yingyu for a while. He laughed strangely. Haha, you're the daughter of that slut in Leah. Hearing him, the other 3 warriors of the Bai family grinned. Their murderous auras rose. The Wu brothers frowned slightly. Mia didn't care. She waved her hand and said simply, kill them all. Well, it's good for her if we just kill her. Bai Hao clenched his jaw as lust flashed in his face. He screamed excitedly like a duck. That slut has such a beautiful daughter. The Bai family's men should serve her well. Mia seemed to not be bothered by this issue. She just talked faintly. I don't care about the process. I only want the brilliant star fruit tree. I won't interfere no matter how you want to kill them. The 4/3 sky of ethereal god realm of the Bai family laughed evilly. Their eyes sparkled like a pack of hungry wolves. The drifting fire of fantasy mist star R and the Bai family of dry bone star area had a grudge that was deep to the bone. The Bai family killed Shang Yingyu's grandfather, but the drifting fire had also killed many warriors of this family. These 2 forces from the adjacent star areas had been fighting for hundreds of years, which caused the loss of many experts. The resentment between them was as deep as the sea. Once they met, they would have a bloody battle that other warriors couldn't stop. Bai Hao's team grinned fiendishly as they didn't mind the Wu brothers. They directly controlled their massive beasts and dashed toward Shang Yingyu. Thunder! Thunder! The massive blue lightning strikes shot out of Shang Yingyu's curvy body. Shortly after, countless electric snakes gushed out and filled the place where she was standing. They were frightened as they watched this scene. The giant white ape, the demonic dragon, the fighting eagle, and the python were gliding furiously like mountains with brutal and murderous auras. They roared and screamed maliciously. With one jump, they could cross several hundred meters and directly press down on Shang Yingyu's head. I owe your father a favor. Wu Feng's eyes were cold and harsh. The fan in his hand swayed and released many rivers that were as bright as the sky. The icy cold aura filled this area. Carrying the grumbling noise of the flowing water, they all headed to the fantasy beasts controlled by the Bai family's warriors. The Bai family is indeed despicable. Wu Bai laughed crazily and arrogantly. The gold armor on his body sparkled as he violently stormed towards the others with his big hammer. The Wu brothers joined the battle on Shang Yingyu's side to deal with the Bai family's warriors. As soon as they came, Shang Yingyu felt much better. Charming Mia was indifferent. She watched the Bai family's warriors fighting the Wu brothers and Shang Yingyu, but she didn't seem to join. Quite the contrary, she walked towards the brilliant star fruit tree, and she didn't even throw Shi Yin a look on her way. He had only first sky of ethereal god realm, but he dared to come and explore the ancient continent. He wanted to court death, she thought to herself. Shi Yin was also not interested in the battle between Bai Hao's group. the Wu brothers and Yu. He knew that as the Wu brothers were giving her hands, Yu's life wasn't in danger. It was good for him. Just like Mia, his attention fell on the brilliant starfruit tree. Seeing Mia walking towards the brilliant starfruit tree, Yin didn't hesitate to glide towards the brilliant starfruit tree too. You court death. Mia's face was cold. An intimidating gravity suddenly pressed from the sky and covered Yin. Boom, boom. As Yin was gliding, he fell abruptly as if a big mountain had just knocked him down. He fell so dizzily. The furious gravity swarmed over him and pushed him on the swampy ground, making him dirty. He felt as if a mountain was placed on his shoulder that prevented him from moving. The terrifying gravity didn't stop there, and it continued to rise. He felt like he was actually carrying the mountains on his back. He couldn't even wiggle his fingers. Even though Old Orchid Star was a strange star with tremendous gravity, Yin could still move on that planet. However, Mia was applying a horrible gravity on him that was hundreds of times stronger. If his body hadn't been much stronger than the others at first sky of ethereal god realm, he would have been crushed in that strike. Mia at third sky of ethereal god realm cultivated gravity power Upanishad. The sudden attack she had struck in just a blink had frightened him badly. She didn't even look at Yin when she took action. She just calmly dashed towards the brilliant starfruit tree, her graceful body drawing a beautiful curve in the air. She disdained Yin obviously. Inside that crazy gravity magnetic field, Yin's eyes were getting colder. His strong muscles shriveled shortly. His hot blood exploded. Under the urge of his demon blood, each cell in his body was shivering in thrill. An intimidating energy gushed out furiously. Shortly after, the murderous aura shot up into the sky. Boom! Yin's face was pressed on the muddy ground. He got rid of the gravity field. His body was vividly red and different energies gushed out of his body, making people dizzy. Mia turned when she was about to reach the brilliant starfruit tree. She was actually surprised. Her bright eyes scanned Yin as if she was studying him. Well, you weren't smashed yet. Seems like your body has been quenched and your attainment is not bad. Mia nodded and her left hand touched the void, aiming at Yin. Just like a flood gushing or a tornado wreaking havoc, the extremely fierce energy surged and made the air exploded. Along its way, the ground cracked as if it was a long sword scratching the ground and creating bottomless ditches. Yin's face changed. When her small, white hand pressed down, he found that the space around him was squeezed until it was deformed. The furious energy could even be compared to a warrior at first sky of incipient god realm. The god power accumulated in Mia's body was beyond his best imagination. Unless he could transform to the immortal demon body, he couldn't withstand this attack. The energy in Mia's attack could destroy the earth though. Crack! At the critical moment, Yin was as calm as a majestic mountain. The energy of his entire body was urged. His space power Upanishad was mobilized. A narrow slit with many strange lights shooting out suddenly appeared in front of him. The gush of invisible energy furiously overflowed into that slit and disappeared. Mia was baffled. She looked at Yin. Space power Upanishad. Take a look. Yin's face was as calm as water. However, his images suddenly shattered like a broken mirror, as if he was minced by many space sabers. He disappeared shortly after. The starlight dots abruptly emerged by the brilliant starfruit tree. Yin's body congregated. He had traveled 10,000 meters and crossed Mia. Yin extended one hand and snatched it. Starlight emitted dazzlingly from his palm as he grabbed the brilliant starfruit tree. The starlight ripples protecting the brilliant starfruit tree didn't prevent him from touching it. He could finally grab the brilliant starfruit tree. Star power Upanishad. Mia's face became ugly. She couldn't help but shout. Bai Hao, Wu Bai, Wu Feng, and Xiangying Yu also turned around to look at this area. Bai Hao's face was restless anxious. Guys, goodbye. Yin held the brilliant starfruit tree in one hand. His body looked like pieces of a broken mirror that radiated light. He vanished before the beams of shattered light fell on the ground. Under people's gazes, Shi Yan's body and aura disappeared completely as if he had fallen into some strange, unknown space. The two parties which had just engaged in a battle were dumbstruck. Mia grimaced as if she had just swallowed a fly. She stared at the spot Shi Yan had just disappeared and shouted crazily, "Find him! Hurry up!" The four warriors of the Bai family were startled. Even if he cultivates space power Upanishad, he can't get out of the ancient continent as he pleases. No one can do that. He must be still around. Mia took a deep breath to calm down. At most, he could only use his space power Upanishad to teleport. The distance should be limited too. Scatter and find him. She was wrong about Shi Yan. The warriors who cultivated star power Upanishad could pass the layers of starlight protection of the brilliant star fruit tree. Mia knew this. The others knew this. After Shi Yan had appeared, he first used fire power, which was prevented by the natural barriers of the brilliant star fruit tree. This move had deceived Mia. It made her assume that Shi Yan was like them. He had only the typical powers Upanishad. If she had known Shi Yan cultivated star power Upanishad, she would have never let Shi Yan approach the brilliant star fruit tree. Never. Too bad that Shi Yan had made use of her disdain and assumption. He had used the marvelous space and star powers Upanishads to break her defense and took the brilliant star fruit tree before she could react. He left without hesitating and left her with a mind full of the flame of rage. "Are you guys on the same side?" Wu Feng glanced at Shang Yingyu, his face dark and cold. "You want to make use of our brother? At least, you should have warned us, right?" "No." Shang Yingyu spoke with a cold face. "I also want to kill him." Shang Yingyu didn't wait for Wu Feng to answer, or for Bai Hao and Mia to focus on her. She leaped and turned into a blue lightning strike. She dashed away shortly after. "Go get them. Once you find them, kill them immediately," said Mia with a malicious complexion. Chapter 1107. Refine the Fruit Tree. Chapter 1107. Refine the Fruit Tree _ A blue lightning strike flashed above a dark, wet swamp and disappeared in just a blink of an eye. Shang Yingyu ran rapidly. He didn't dare to stand there because she knew that there was no use lingering. Although she was arrogant, she knew that she wasn't equal to the four warriors of the Bai family. There was a need to mention that mysterious Mia. Wu Bai and Wu Feng shot out energy like an ignited powder keg. A flame burned in their eyes as they left the place. Mia stood by the place where the brilliant star fruit tree used to emerge, looking at the bottomless pit. Her beautiful face was so cold as if it had a layer of frost. She flung her arms and said directly, "From this center spot, scatter and pursue them. That brat has only first sky of ethereal god realm. Any of you can kill him when you see him." The three warriors of the Bai family seemed to have ignored Mia's instructions. They only looked at Bai Hao. Bai Hao nodded and blinked at the three of them. He said faintly, "Go after them." The four shadows shot out like four rainbows to four different directions. In just a blink, they were out of sight. After everyone had left, Mia's eyes looked puzzled. She mumbled to herself as if something had disturbed her mind. As soon as Shang Yingyu had left the besiege of the Bai family's warrior, she disappeared. She used her special device to conceal her body and aura. Hiding inside a light case, she moved in a direction by herself. All of a sudden, she found that this light cage was spacious. She couldn't help but think about the beautiful moment that had just happened inside the light cage. Something strange flashed in her eyes, but she quieted her mind quickly. The corners of her mouth curved coldly and resentfully. While her straight thighs moved, she had traveled a long distance. When she thought that she should be pretty far away from the Bai family's warriors, she hesitated for a while before retrieving the light cage. Her beautiful figure reappeared, standing under the shade of a big tree and waiting for something. 1 hour later, a muscular man sauntered toward her with a cold face. He reached where she was but kept silent. "You dare to come?" Shang Yingyu bit her lower lips and said angrily. She knew that Shi Yan could recognize life energy fluctuation within a specific area, and this place was the location where they had agreed to meet. She came here and put away her invisible light cage to demand an explanation from Shi Yan. However, She wasn't so sure that Shi Yin would show himself. Why wouldn't I come? Shi Yin was holding the brilliant star fruit tree in his left hand. That exotic fruit tree radiated silver starlight, which looked like fireflies falling on his arm. It made it a drawing of starlight with fulgent sparkling. You should understand that if you hadn't struck me out of the protection, we wouldn't have been exposed. As long as we didn't get seen, I could have helped you attack the Bai family after the Bai family's warriors and the Wu brothers finished their battle. Too bad. You ruined everything. I ruined everything? Green veins bulged on Shang Yingyu's forehead. She couldn't help but shout, if you hadn't harassed me, would I have struck you? If I didn't push you out, who knows what else you would have done? While screaming, she couldn't help but remember the scene she saw when she stooped her head and caught a glimpse of his surging lower body. She grimaced as she knew that Shi Yin was just pretending to be calm. It was unexpected. Without being embarrassed or ashamed, Shi Yin said harshly, Who King would have known that your light case couldn't stand the shockwaves that badly? All right, it stops right here. Then, he turned around and left, leaving her a cold utterance. There's no way to cooperate with you. We shall terminate our agreement. You're despicable. Shang Yingyu gasped for her breath and said indignantly, You got the brilliant star fruit tree. You seized the chance and got benefits. Now you turn your back to me. What kind of man are you? I will try my best to kill the Bai family's warriors, but I won't do it with you. About the 7-colored demonic flower, I will take it on my own. You don't need to bother. Shi Yan's figure left far away, and he didn't turn once to look at her. After his voice vanished, his body had disappeared completely. Shang Yingyu stood there for a long time with her cold face. She leaned against the tree and felt so bitter and resentful. Several thousand meters under a swamp with thick mud, an area was burned which made a solid, dry cave. Space barriers that could prevent soul consciousness detection and sounds were set up around that dry space. Shi Yin sat cross-legged and studied the brilliant star fruit tree in front of him. The roots, trunks, branches, and leaves of the brilliant star fruit tree looked like they were made of beautiful green jade. It felt cool in his palm. The 9 chestnut-sized fruits were sparkling like stars, releasing surging energy. Blue halos rippled, which were strong defenses to other people. If they took risks and touched the tree, they would be damaged. However, those blue halos weren't so threatening to him because he cultivated star power Upanishad. The brilliant star fruit tree was the sole altar of an incipient God realm expert who cultivated star power Upanishad. It fused with a life star after he died completely. After different experiences, it became this tree. It didn't have the soul or cognition, but the truth of star power Upanishad. The patterns on the branches, roots, leaves, and the fruits of that tree had lines like a star map. Vaguely, they were following something mysterious in the sea of stars. Shi Yin placed one of his fingers on the root of that tree. Squinting, he spun his soul altar and focused his mind and soul on the star power Upanishad. Slowly, his finger glowed and released countless starlight dots. They were glowing like small bacteria congregating in the roots of the tree. At that moment, his soul and sea of consciousness were connected to the tree. Wisps of his soul consciousness flowed like small streams coming to the vast sea. They swam in a sea filled with starlight. Countless fine, twinkling lines of starlight weaved and combined with each other and created a map of the sea of stars. Some looked like bows and arrows, and some looked like screaming beasts or spoons. Some even looked like horses with wings. These images were constellations made of different stars in the galaxy. They held some meanings of nature, and they could connect to warriors who cultivated star power Upanishad directly. Shi Yan's soul consciousness flew in there and felt in silence. Suddenly, his eyes brightened as he had grasped something. The star map that looks like a spoon. Wasn't it the Big Dipper with 7 stars? From a distance, the Big Dipper did look like a spoon. Shi Yin felt something blooming in his mind. He seemed to grasp something. He immersed himself into that gleam of recognition while his soul consciousness moved around the brilliant star fruit tree, searching in its roots or branches. While his soul consciousness saw the mysteries of the tree, he was sinking and didn't recognize his condition. At the same time, One of the brilliant star fruits was losing its brilliance, and it shriveled as if the nutrients inside were drawn away. He didn't know that his study of the mysteries of the brilliant star fruit tree required the massive energy inside the brilliant star fruit. Beams of starlight radiated from his body as the fruit was withering. It looked like he had billions of fireflies congregating at his body. They moved around and disappeared into his body in the end, and turned into a beam of pure energy. Time flew hurriedly. After one fruit shriveled, another brilliant star fruit bloomed with brilliance before its light was absorbed and taken away. While he was studying the meanings of star power Upanishad, his soul consciousness seemed to move around the vast universe with countless stars. He didn't recognize it, but the brilliant star fruits were disappearing one by one. As their energy was used up, they had to return to nature. Yin didn't know that. Under the swamp, he held the brilliant star fruit tree in his hand to comprehend the power Upanishad that was crucial to his life. The star power Upanishad was a strange power that was rare even in the fountainhead of powers Upanishads. Also, it was the most difficult power to advance. However, this power of his was growing magnificently. It gave him unimaginable knowledge. Staying in a small room, his body was filled with billions of starlight dots. If someone could see this, he would figure out that those starlight dots were actually forming stars of the vast sea of stars in the universe. It was a star map that was scaled several times smaller. The brilliant star fruit on the brilliant star fruit tree in his hand disappeared one by one. The branches and leaves were dried up and the roots were cracking. They all merged into the small-scaled universe and disappeared. Yin was immersed in the center of the universe. He sank into the marvelous sea of stars, as if he was a rigid fossil that would remain still forever. Time continued to fly. The starlight in the sky all seeped into his body and circulated in his veins, bones, marrow, blood, and flesh. They moved to his sea of consciousness and jumped into his ethereal extent. He stood still, but his body was shivering, as if something was quenching his blood and flesh. Dirty water oozed out of his pores, and the roots of his hair eliminated specks of dirt. His hair became glossy and dazzling while his body was covered by the silky sheet of stars, and his bones the rigid jade. This was a new transformation. The great benefit that the brilliant star fruit tree brought him was the usage of the energy of the sea of stars to quench his body, bone, blood, flesh, and his soul. It gave an excellent tonic to every corner of his body. However, he hadn't woken up yet. His mind and soul seemed to wander around the immense galaxy as if he couldn't find a way back. Right under the swamp, he had stood there for several years without knowing the situation of the world out there. The brilliant star fruit tree was a peculiar, original, incipient grade treasure. It was really hard to create one tree. To the warriors cultivating star power, it was a priceless treasure that existed only in legends. Yin had refined the brilliant star fruit tree and absorbed its energy completely. He had understood the essence of his power Upanishad, which also increased his spirit, soul, and body to another level. He had broken the threshold from first sky of ethereal God realm to second sky of ethereal God realm. When he got up, he had reached second sky of ethereal God realm. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.